All right, we'll get the meeting going here. I would like to call the regular council meeting for Monday, October 27th to order. It's an honor to begin by acknowledging that we are gathered on the traditional lands of the Algonquin-speaking people, represented by the Songhees and Concepcion nations. We're grateful to live, work, and play in this special place. May I have a mover and seconder to adopt today's council agenda, please? Thank you, Councillor Olson and Councillor Jordison. Discussion? Seeing none. Any opposed? Seeing none, motion carries. Item 3 is the release of in-camera resolutions. We are releasing a resolution from our October 14th special in-camera meeting, IC 2025-75, which is the Brookes School Services Agreement. The resolution in a summary was the service agreement in effect will be reinforced, and that the rates for the next 10-year period commencing 2025 are approved under the agreement calculation in Appendix B of the agreement. Item 4, which is a mayor's message. Just a couple things here. First of all, we attended, there's a few of us that attended the Best of the West Shore Awards, was it the last Thursday evening. And one of our businesses actually won the award for Best Senior Services, and that's Trillium West Shore on Whale Road. So congratulations to them. Big shout out. We also, the city itself won a few awards. We won Best Free Fun, our music in the park. So that was actually Colwood Langford, but we can say we started it, right, Sandra? We started it. We also won the best park in the West Shore. Our Colwood Creek Park was voted the best park. And finally, the best beach, of course, the Squamish Lagoon won that. So well done to the city and well done to Trillium West Shore for the awards. I just wanted to give a heads up to people. We do publish a newsletter, and the Colwood Connection newsletter that's in various people that are subscribing. It's here in your e-box right now, or your emailed inbox. And if you want to, please sign up and receive updates at www.colwood.ca. Subscribe. On that note, shall move on to adoption and receipt of the minutes. May I have a mover and seconder for the adoption and receipt of the minutes in section 5 of the agenda. Thank you very much, Councillor Ward and Councillor Grove. Discussion? Seeing none. Any opposed? Seeing none, motion carries. We'll move on to public participation, my favorite time. So no written submissions were received prior to the agenda publication. And we had one written submission that was received after agenda publication. In fact, we received it this morning, and that will be appended to the agenda tomorrow. In addition, it will be available on the city's meetings website following tonight's meeting. I'd like to again thank the public for their written submissions, and no members of the public have registered to speak virtually tonight. So moving on, at this point in time, this is members' time. I'll invite the public to come on up and present your concerns or ask questions to council. Alternately, you can wait until your agenda item is brought up and speak to it then. May I see a show of hands of people that want to wait? No. Okay, at this point in time, I will call up people for public participation. Come up, Carol. I see you.
Thank you. Carol Brown, Scenic. Scenic sends their appreciation and encouragement for the work undertaken by the City of Colwood and their consultants on the urban forest strategy before Council. We wish to express appreciation for the direction that the city has taken in demonstrating concern and leadership in advancing stronger environmental strategies and frameworks. We hope that you will consider CNEC's recommendations in the following categories. We also hope that you might have had a chance to read our full report sent to Mayor and Council on the urban forest strategy. The first, the membership endorses amending the report to increase the urban forest tree canopy of Colwood to 40% from the suggested option of 35%. As Colwood was recorded to have a tree canopy of 42% in 2008, CNET believes that it is an appropriate goal and a target to achieve at least 40% by actively supporting an increase in planting strategy and tree retention. CNEC also supports the idea of an arborist to be employed by the city as a consultant or as a paid staff member. We support the planting of native species that will be resilient to warming climate in Colwood. We fully support the retention of mature trees on building sites with tree preservation covenants applied to the property title at time of large density subdivisions when appropriate. Really? Oh, there was so much more I wanted to say. Just in conclusion, we applaud the work that's being done, and we just want to strengthen it even more. We want to see those trees retained on building sites and to have a building permit in hand before the trees come down. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Carol. Anyone else from the public wish to speak at this time? Going once, going twice, it's gone. Okay, we shall move on to item 7, which is the consent agenda. Items in this section may be voted on in one motion. A member may request to remove any item for the purpose of individual debate or discussion. Is there anyone that wishes to move any of the items? Okay, can I have a seconder? Okay, Councilor Grove, Jensen and Grove. And discussion? Seeing none, any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you very much. We'll move on. Okay, new business. I'll introduce the first person. I know him. The RCMP quarterly update, acting OIC West Shore RCMP detachment, Inspector Steve Rose. Steve, over to you.
Thank you, Your Worship, councillors, staff, and community members. I appreciate the opportunity to come in and speak tonight and provide you with an update on our annual performance plan and then a snapshot of some of the matters that we've been investigating or successes that we've had in the past month or month and a half. Before I get into the third quarter report, I'll just hit a couple of community policing and communications efforts that community members may have witnessed, heard about, or seen through some of our online profiles. As you know, our school liaison officers are back in the schools in both School District 61 and 62 this September. The West Shore RCMP Cops for Cancer Gala occurred on October the 2nd, and there were certainly representatives from all of the communities, including Colwood. And I'm happy to report that we raised just over $80,000. An absolutely incredible event, very much supported by elected officials, community members, and the business community here on the West Shore. We ended up being the largest single fundraiser for the Tour de Rock this year. And my appreciation and gratitude goes out to all that supported that initiative. On October 20th, I hosted a public town hall at the municipal office in View Royal, and that was open to all members of the West Shore communities. Our next one, shortly after Christmas, will be here in Colwood. We recently released a video educating the public on our new technology, that being the body-worn cameras. All of our officers now are wearing, our frontline officers are wearing cameras, which are capturing those audio and visual interactions, which increases transparency all around and provides a great source of evidence collection as well for offenses that are occurring. We've done some social media posts and positive education around e-bikes and e-scooters on the West Shore, as we want to reinforce that vehicles interacting with those on cycles and scooters needs to be done in a safe manner and in compliance with both the Motor Vehicle Act and the regulations. For anyone that follows our social media, you would have also seen our social media campaign that it was a partnership between our youth outreach team and the Pacific Center for Family Services around kids returning to school and supporting their mental health as they prepared to get back into school in September. Lastly, in honor of National Day of Truth and Reconciliation, members of our community and the Indigenous Policing Unit welcome staff of School District 61 for an educational opportunity on our detachment canoe, Let's Spirit. Those are just a couple of the highlights. With that, I will jump into the material covering the third quarter. So just for reference, the third quarter includes all calls for service at the detachment between January 1st and September 30th, 2025. On the screen, you'll note the annual performance objectives, which were established through consultation with the elected officials in the 5 communities, the 2 nations, and input was also gathered from the public at large through an online survey this spring. I have some data here to talk about our progress in each of these areas. Before I do that, I will make reference to the overall demand on our calls for service. You'll see in the pie chart to the left, it represents each community's contribution to the West Shore detachment, the overall composition. And then on the right-hand side, the demand for the overall police services. I'll highlight Colwood, being that you currently fund 19% of the detachment complement. And in the reporting period, you've used just shy of 20% of the overall detachment resources, or made that many calls for service. Overall, across the West Shore, the demand is up by 2.6% year on year over the same period. A quick glance at the calls for service by month, and you'll note the highlighted section there in April being the highest with 489 in Colwood, and that's compared across the board. Colwood, unlike the West Shore as a whole, saw a 1% decrease in the overall demand when comparing 2024 to 2025. The West Shore as a total for those areas reported on through the annual performance plan are identified. So we've broken that down into property crime, drug offenses, collisions, and mental health related calls for service. You'll see slight increases or decreases across the whole of the West Shore. More specifically, I'll jump over to Colwood, and this shows the breakdown in each of the communities. You'll notice pretty good trends across the board with the exception of the collisions and traffic related offenses. So injury collisions are up this period by 41% and non-injury up by 10%. We've also seen a very small increase in impaired driving. I will draw your attention to the violation tickets being down. The primary reason for that is shortages within the municipal traffic unit that we've experienced this quarter. Ordinarily, there are 5 officers as part of that team that patrol all of the roads on the West Shore. However, we've been missing 1 to 1.5 of those officers during this reporting period. And so obviously less dedicated resources in traffic enforcement leads to less tickets being issued. A little more about traffic enforcement generally. As mentioned, 138 collisions were reported here in Colwood and 40 people during the reporting period charged with impaired driving. It astounds me that after 25 years of policing, we continue to have to talk about and educate and discourage people from drinking and driving or using drugs and driving. However, here we are. Sending that messaging out again that there are lots of options in these larger urban centers to get home safe, which doesn't involve putting everyone else at risk. We've had the traffic unit do 12 enhanced traffic patrols during the quarter, specifically here in Colwood, in the areas of Wishart Road and Machosen Road, Lagoon Road and Machosen Road, and Marianne Crescent and Carindale Road. Those are areas that we tend to get a number of calls about or traffic related concerns being reported to the police. Our community and youth engagement continues. We have a very strong community and Indigenous policing unit. You'll see that so far this period, we have been at school 634 times, both during and after school. And of those, only 171 were calls for service or potential offenses being investigated. The balance, just shy of 500, was school liaison visits where we were engaging with students, attending events, or speaking with classes at the invitation of school staff. I'd like to draw attention to restorative justice. Restorative justice is an alternative way of resolving criminal matters for first-time offenders, young offenders, or people who made a bad choice and don't need to be prosecuted through the traditional criminal justice system. So far this year in 2025, we have had 42 investigations deferred from the criminal justice system through RJ. And of those, 29 offenders were identified as adults and 13 were youth. I will note that those individuals that were diverted subsequently completed 181 hours of community service throughout the West Shore and contributed just over $8,000 in restitution to victims impacted by their offenses. The most common offenses that we deferred include shoplifting, theft, and mischief, which feeds into the table at the bottom, just identifying what the most common youth-related crimes are, and obviously some of those minor offenses being diverted through RJ if and when appropriate. I highlighted some of these already, and again, a bit of a plug for our communications team, where we strive to let the community at large know what we're up to and small steps they can take to make themselves and the community safer. You'll notice our school liaison officers there going back to school with their lunch bags, along with some traffic enforcement, as mentioned, regarding e-scooters. I think my time is up, but hopefully you'll graciously give me a few more minutes. And a couple of more references, including some work with CRD bylaws, and of course, that's something that we do with the bylaw unit here in Colwood and also the other communities. A couple of notable investigations during the period. And I'll actually start at the bottom because this one was an investigation that brought notoriety to Colwood. And that, of course, was the arson and shooting at the home of AP Dillon here in the community. On September 30th, a conviction was entered and Abjit Kingra was convicted and sentenced for discharging a firearm with intent and arson involving that matter. There was a total of 8 years incarceration delivered by the sitting justice. And it's noteworthy that the judge, in speaking about the reason that this offense was committed, drew attention to the fact that it had been done so in connection with or as a result of guidance from the Lawrence Bishnoi crime group from overseas. And this is the first file in Canada, despite this being a topic across Canada, where there's actually been a conviction entered in a court matter and we're certainly very happy with that outcome. It's not something we like to see in a small community. However, when it does happen, you can rest assured we have a team that's capable and competent to investigate this matter and bring it before the courts, which we did here, to a successful resolution. There is a co-accused on this matter who has fled the country and continues to be the subject of attempts to locate and apprehend in order to bring him to justice as well. You'll see a couple of other mentions there regarding investigations that were notable, and a photo of a recovered stolen backhoe from a property up on Malahat that our property crime unit was able to recover. With that summary, I will not go to the last slide. I guess that's the last one. And invite any questions from the public, your worship, or your fellow councillors. Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much, Inspector Rose. Very informative. I'll open it up to questions from council. Okay, I have some questions. So I note again that you know, the stats are really interesting. I get sort of wrapped up in them, and you know, my perspective on this, and I still don't have a perspective because you know, we go from 0 drug things to 1, and we've got a 100% increase, right? But 1 is nothing, right? So it's a bit deceiving. But one of the things that I've always stated is that, you know, these file counts, they're kind of, you know, this is my perspective, and you can certainly correct me on this, Inspector Rose, but file counts don't really mean a lot to me, to tell you the truth. You know, would be really more meaningful to me is the total hours, you know, that are spent. You know, I think that would be so much more valuable. So, and what I mean by that too is because we're interested in helping the RCMP, because we certainly don't want you guys to be spending a lot of times sitting in hospitals. We don't want to see you guys sitting a lot of your time in the offices. We, you know, we want you to be real policemen, right? To be out there in the community doing whatever, right? So it's important to us. So are those stats kept the way that you've done it? Are they that macro so that we can see that?
They aren't. We currently don't track the number of hours, for example, assigned to any given investigation. That's a complicated metric. We do keep data for our frontline officers on how much time they spend on an investigation at the front end,
Yes.
meaning after they're dispatched, we track from the time of dispatch until they arrive at the scene and how much time they spend on the scene on that first instance. Beyond that, we don't collect the data of how many times they revisit that scene. They may spend time taking statements on that investigation. It's only that initial data set. Because investigators, on average, you know, they handle anywhere from 20 to 30 on an active caseload. They prioritize that caseload, that workload, and they don't have a mechanism to record or track the number of hours to each of those investigations or the tasks within each of those investigations. And you're quite right, Mr. Mayor, that you know, the call for service in and of itself doesn't account for workload. A call for service could be a 3-minute phone call and that file is done. But a call for service may be an 18-month investigation in the case of one of the more substantive, you know, commercial break and enters or a person's offense or a, you know, a sex-based crime. So
the and the other thing was just on those file counts again. Do you count like those repeat offenders? Like, is the file count every time he does it, it's the same guy, or do you just count it as once by that guy? I was always wondering.
The general rule is that if it's a different date, a different time, or a different place that something is being reported, it would result in a new call for service.
Right.
So you're quite familiar with a property here on Souk Road. We've been working with bylaw to address, you know, that address itself may have, and again, I'm just ballparking, a couple of hundred calls for service all involving the same or similar individuals. Each time the police attend themselves, or we attend because of a neighbor complaint, or we attend with bylaw, that would generate a new call for service.
So I did notice one of the biggest number of files they're related to mental health, right? By far, it is the number one. But one of the trends that I noticed is our shoplifting. It's going crazy. Any reasons for that? Are you more vigilant, or it's because we got more stores now?
One of the reasons that there's been a substantive increase in shoplifters is that we applied for and obtained funding from the provincial government to deal with shoplifting specifically and aggressive and assaultive shoplifters, because we were seeing a trend where small business owners were attempting to interrupt or stop that offense from occurring, and then assaults were following. So we made an application. We got I think it was around $120,000 from the province to specifically target that. So our crime reduction unit did enhanced enforcement of shoplifting in partnership with loss prevention officers at several of the biggest targets for shoplifting. And what that did was drove up the number of people being apprehended and prosecuted.
That makes so much sense. I was kind of concerned there. And last question, I promise. In your humble opinion, your expertise opinion, what are the red flags that, you may wish to point out to us right now? Is there anything that we should be going, let's pay attention to this, is in your opinion?
We continue to see a substantive increase in sex-based crimes and those involving child sex abuse images. And again, back to your point about the complexity and how time-consuming some of those investigations are, none of these files are done quickly because they are very much statement-based and evidence-based via judicial authorizations, meaning we have to go to a judge, ask for permission to get, information from the telecommunication company. Then we have to ask for permission to go and get records about the home where we think that internet service may be connected. And then we have to write a production order, or in most instances, a search warrant, to go and search that residence for devices that may have connected to the internet. And in some cases, we then have to ask permission to search further on that device. So they're very time consuming. Because of the volume of those, we've implemented a triaging system for the number of files being reported. And in the case of child sex abuse images, our attention has been turned to those where there's active offending believed to be occurring within our jurisdiction. There's active and ongoing distribution or collection or production of those images. And those two continue to rise to the top of the pile and get tasked to an investigator to follow up on in a timely fashion. In the case of some of the lower frequency of uploads or downloads, or where there's a singular upload or download where there may have been a public network being used, we're triaging those as much lower. And in some instances, not getting to those files. We're trying to direct our attention and limited resources to those that come with a higher success rate and where there's active victimization occurring. Would I prefer to investigate every single one of those? I would. The reality is we don't have sufficient humans to do that. And that's without talking about the challenge that those files create, those sex-based crimes and child sex abuse images investigations, because as you can appreciate, when our employees are working in that area for extended periods and subjected to the absolutely vile material that's collected, it has a very substantive impact on their well-being. And, even here at West Shore, we've experienced that with some of our employees needing time away, work, counseling, and assistance in overcoming that line of work. It's one of the less pleasant areas of policing that, unfortunately, still constitutes a criminal offense and one that we need to focus on.
Thank you for that insight. Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Councillor Day?
Thank you. I was just curious, because you've recently gotten the ability to have body camera footage. I wonder if there's a way to link that with the amount of time that your team is spending on particular types of files. Even if it, I know it's always hard to quantify what any of us do in a day. But in a way that could help us to address um, specifically like the spiral of negative impact on people's lives from those original interactions. I'm just very struck by how addiction and homelessness affect mental health of individuals and families, and how um, we're at it's such a challenge to provide services to those people, that being able to identify any of those statistics for your work would allow a better case to be made for more services to exist, because that's basically the problem we're running smack into with most of those things. But really, with any police file that you cared to look at, there's a real negative impact to families from uh, the part that didn't get addressed through the court system. And usually it's a pretty blunt instrument, and there's a lot left on the table to work with. So I'm just looking to find ways. Maybe it's not comprehensive and that each member reports every day, but maybe they choose a representative day from their footage that's recorded to help them to provide you with some of those stats for how their day was spent, so that you could get a bit more insight into and having some real data linked to it might really go farther towards um, supporting the need for programming, so that it isn't continuing to get to be a bigger and bigger problem for the few number of staff that we have to try to deal with.
Yeah, Counselor, I agree with you that we could do a better job of collecting data and representing the physical labor that's required to advance these investigations through to successful prosecution. Um, the body worn camera, which we have rolled out, essentially captures everything the officer is doing while in an operational setting. There isn't a mechanism within it currently to characterize or categorize, time spent per file. The video, for the most part, is running anytime the police officer is outside of their police car. The rule of thumb that we've applied is seatbelt off, camera on. And so what it's then capturing is from the time the officer exits the vehicle, say they attend a motor vehicle accident, they interact with the drivers, the ambulance staff, the tow truck driver, even the cleanup of the road at the end so that the road can be reopened. And it's going to record that entire period. When they are ready to clear from that call for service, they turn the camera off as they're getting back into their police vehicle. So it does capture everything the officer was doing, but it isn't necessarily specific. Some of that time is just waiting for one of those support services to arrive at something like a crash. Um, I believe that we need to make more information available to the public. We've recently expanded our communication team to add a municipal employee that's an analyst to support our civilian member criminal analyst with producing and providing more information to the public. And one of the preliminary discussions I've had with her is about making a dashboard available online so that any member of the public, elected official, citizen, someone with an interest in policing, can go and see and filter our data by their community, by their neighborhood, and see what is happening around them. We need to be cognizant, though, that anytime we try to increase the amount of data we're collecting, processing, and producing, that comes as a cost as well. Those numbers and the statistics don't just appear. They require somebody to collate the data, interpret the data, and provide the data. And I think you're on to something when you suggest, providing a better detail or more detail about how we spend our time. And I've made a note that there's an opportunity there, maybe to do some case study type analysis of individuals within some of the units in the detachment, to try to grab a data set. I think there's an opportunity there. And I'll have that discussion with our new analyst.
Yeah, I know it's a very difficult area to suggest follow up on, but I think that some hard data would be really beneficial where we're trying to push for some changes. And you mentioned some of the areas that I have considerable concern with, including child pornography and sextortion. That I think everyone would agree we want to do something more about, but without some hard data to make the case, it's hard to advocate to higher levels of government to invest in the necessary services. So I just think that, focus your efforts on where you think it would make a difference, because there is a cascading effect of negative impact to people who are homeless or have mental health issues or have persistent issues with the RCMP in any way, to anyone and everyone who's connected to them.
Thank you.
Councillor Jensen, please.
Thank you, Your Worship, and thank you, Inspector. I did make a couple of notes as we were going along here. Nothing exciting, but I love the chat about data, and it's gone on for as long as I've been working as well. And the only thing I would say is all these fantastic ideas always seem to impact the lowest working officer in the neighborhood, who we want to unburden, not increase the burden. And I can remember having to fill out a log sheet for a whole shift every 15 minutes on exactly what I was doing, whether it was eating lunch or going to the bathroom. And I'm telling you, it's a pain.
And if I may, Councillor, the RCMP had a similar form years ago called a C75D. And so officers had to account for what they did in 15-minute intervals. That went by the wayside. It was assumed technology would improve that. It didn't. And that's why when Councillor Day alluded to, knowing how much work is involved, I was selective in how I suggested we focus on that case study or some data sets by looking at case studies of individuals within the building. And the last one I would assign that to is a frontline general duty officer. I'm thinking more on the investigative side that would capture how long an investigation takes. And just today, we received notice, one of the general investigation constables has been working on a series of frauds. In short, an individual is contracted to perform some services. Those services weren't rendered, but deposits were made. And the allegation is made to the police that there was never an intention by the contractor to perform the duties, and thus the fraud. The investigator spent about 18 months interviewing parties, collecting, business records, banking records, interviewing the subject of that complaint, and formed the opinion that there was never an intent by the accused to proceed through to completion of these contracts. And so the matter was presented to the authorities for consideration of criminal charges, and it stopped there. So sometimes, with the best of intentions and the dedicated workforce with the skill sets to solve some of these crimes, especially economic crimes, which are challenging on a good day, despite that effort, we don't have control over the outcome. We simply put the best case forward.
The old gutter cleanings
Without
round
getting
and round
into
we
the
go, they don't go away. So that's the only comment I have on the data collection, and social scientists have been trying to quantify this for I don't know how long, and quite frankly, we need to sort of unburden our working police officers. So I would concur, Inspector. The dashboards with crime data and all that, they're extremely onerous to undertake and to update. And you have to have an employee doing it every single day. And it's fantastic. It's when it works, but for someone that an organization that's resource challenged, I would say it's a bit pie in the sky. Um, your staffing, Inspector, this council took the position that we were going to augment our resourcing over, I believe, a 5-year period. Can you fill us in on how we're doing as far as acquiring new officers and deploying them appropriately?
I believe Colwood currently contributes either 23.6 or 24.6 in that range. Traditionally, the West Shore was staffed on a sort of a cop to pop ratio, meaning as the population grew, the number of officers grew overall to meet that demand. There's definitely been recognition by elected officials that there are weaknesses there. My predecessor, of course, Superintendent Preston, spoke openly about it not being the best way to predict future need or demand for police services. But in the absence of anything else that created fairness, it was the best we had at the time. And I think that once the new officer in charge is identified, that's certainly a focal point, is bringing the communities together to decide how best to resource the detachment. And I will say it also requires a bit of an open mind around the type of resources. There are many things that we require police officers to do. We need someone wearing this vest and wearing a gun to go into situations that require that level of training and safety. But I would suggest that there's many functions within policing that can also be done by experts in those fields and can be civilians that complement the uniformed staff. Back to the point about making sure that uniformed staff are able to go to those scenes where they're required, and maybe minimizing some of that administrative burden by having civilians supplement that. And we've implemented that across the detachment currently in a couple of areas, but I think that that's an area we ought to be exploring in the coming 5 or 10 years. The detachment overall, we're well staffed, but of course, as the West Shore continues to grow, the pressure, the calls for service, the overall demand continues to increase. And that's not necessarily, saying all crime types are going to increase. Some do, some don't. But the overall demand. So you have more people volunteering that need criminal record checks. You have more people applying for jobs where they need to be fingerprinted. You have individuals that are now having disputes with their neighbors. Even though they're not criminal or criminal offenses, there's still calls for service that prompt the police to attend. And when you move into high density housing, for example, people are more likely to have those disagreements over parking and animals, whereas they may not in a rural area where there's acreages. So that all to say, demand is there. It's not going to go away. I don't think police officers will be unemployed anytime soon, because we provide that level of security for the community at large.
Thank you. And you did mention your body worn cameras, and you did mention officer activated. Is that right?
That's correct.
And are they manually downloaded, or have you gone to like a hotspot type?
It's a cloud-based system. So when the officer returns to the detachment, the device is placed in a docking station where it charges, and it automatically uploads that audio and video to the cloud. And despite the fact that it's not a Canadian company, all of the data captured by those devices is stored on servers in Canada, so I'm told. And it's retained for 2 years.
That's great. Thanks, Inspector. I'm getting the yank. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Inspector Rose, for coming out. Great conversation. Thank you.
Thanks a lot. Take care.
And if I can get the CEO, are you introducing the next speaker or the Corporate Services Officer? Okay, I will introduce them, I guess, from the information. From Ecom 911 Dispatch Services, we have Stephen Thatcher, VP Operations, I believe, correct, Stephen?
Good evening, Your Worship. Yes, indeed.
And you're going to be talking to us about dispatch services agreement, cost allocation model, and understanding of financial implications of this service.
Correct. Yes. Good evening, everyone. Good evening, councillors. Thank you for the invitation to speak. I'm joined this evening by my colleague, Tyler Moore, our Director of Operations Relationship Management. It's part of his responsibility to make sure that the open channels of communication between us, the communities, and the service providers, such as the RCP, remain open. And in particular, it's part of his responsibility to make sure that we're abiding by our end of the obligations. Ecom has been serving residents of Colwood since 2019 and supported police operations. What has changed, of course, in 2025 is it's not the province that's paying the bill anymore. It's you directly through an agreement with us. So we thought this is an opportunity to kind of fill you in a little bit on who we are and where we're going. So the next slide, please. Who is Ecom? I should probably say, what is Ecom? Ecom was founded in the wake of the 1994 Stanley Cup riots. You may remember a pretty big event in Vancouver. It was quickly realized that not only could police officers not talk to each other coming to that scene from other agencies, but they could not talk to fire crews and they could not talk to ambulance crews. So out of that was born Ecom as a radio service provider across the Lower Mainland of British Columbia. So its genesis is radio technology. It provides the backbone for emergency communications in British Columbia. It was formed as a corporation under the BC Corporations Act and the Emergency Communications Act. And as far as I'm aware, the only entity incorporated under the BC Emergency Communications Act is in fact Ecom. Ecom is owned by a series of shareholders who are users of that radio network across the Lower Mainland. All of our revenue comes from government and government-like entities of one form or another. That could be municipal governments such as yours, regional district governments, provincial governments, and federal governments. We do have one or two other outliers like Translate that use our service, but they're not really that helpful in terms of this conversation. I think the important point is that we are cost recovery. We're not a for-profit organization, so every penny that we earn comes from our client base. What do we do for you? As indicated a couple of minutes ago, we've been providing this dispatch service to your residents and to the detachment since 2019. We answer 911 calls from this part of the world. We take your emergency calls for your detachment. We take non-emergency calls, which generally are higher in volume, for your citizens. And we also take care of dispatching, making sure that officers are going to the right scene, they're properly equipped, properly informed to respond to those calls. Our staff work out of a location here on the Lower Island in Saanich, provide service to all of the police communities on the South Island. We do also have two additional sites in the Lower Mainland of British Columbia, our main site in Vancouver. We've also got an additional training site and backup site in Burnaby. To a certain extent, those are interoperable. So if we have issues in one side or the other, we're able to continue to deliver a level of service from the others. If you're interested in coming to visit us at our Vancouver Island location, we've been more than happy to set that up. As I indicated, you are now paying directly for that service. And if you look at sort of the buildup, dispatch is our major enterprise for you, emergency and non-emergency call taking. There are ancillary roles connected with those, not just taking the calls and not just dispatching officers, accounting for their safety. There are also things like Canadian Police Information Center record entry, stolen property, lost or recovered, prohibited driver entry records, warrants, whether people are out on warrants to get arrested, those have to be verified and cleared. So there's a bunch of that paperwork that goes on behind the scenes. Occasionally, we're asked for transcripts of emergency and non-emergency calls for purposes of investigation or prosecution. And of course, all of that runs on a very technical network of communications infrastructure, computing, records management. So all of that goes into the levy that we establish and bill for to you as Colwood and indeed to our other clients who are using similar services. How are our costs shared? In the instance of the Lower Island, and I will say that we serve every police service south of Nanaimo, whether that's RCMP or municipal. So you can see that we serve all of the municipal departments on the island and then the RCMP. The RCMP amount is then split out, as you can see, according to the slide, amongst various stakeholders. That includes, of course, Colwood. There's a provincial component of that, which I'm sure you're familiar with dealing with Colwood and West Shore Detachment, because they've got a provincial policing responsibility as well. And on the RCMP side of things, that's generally been done on the model that we've adopted from the province, which is established strength or authorized strength of the detachment, and then we prorate that accordingly. Now, that model might change. I can tell you that currently Colwood is about 8% of that RCMP share overall. Next slide, please. This is what the budget looks like, sort of presented as a pie chart. You can see that our overall amount is about $17.3 or so million for the entire ECBI operation, and it's broken out both by municipal police force and by the RCMP. So that lower pie chart that you see there is actually the RCMP share, and so you've got a piece of that. I don't think it'll be surprising to anyone that this is a very labor-intensive operation. The vast majority of our revenue goes to keeping our staff, keeping them in place, making sure that they're properly trained, properly supported, that we have the proper infrastructure to make sure that when we have major events, which sadly do happen, that we have mental health supports in place, and making sure that they are available and that resources available 24 hours a day. It's a significant part of why we at ECOM have been very successful in retaining staff at a time when many emergency communication centers are really struggling, not just to meet their service level targets, but to remain staffed at critical times. All right, what does it look like next year? Next slide, please. Thank you. Traditionally, we send out a bit of a forecast midway through the year to tell you what we think our range is going to be for the following year levy. You would have seen a 2025 amount, and so now we're going into 2026. We are working hard to make sure that that range of 9 to 15% comes in at the low end. And what I can say to you this evening is we're actually looking at making it considerably lower than 9% that we originally forecast. I think there are a couple of reasons that we'll share with you why that is the case. We had lower spending in 2025. Call volume has not increased to the same extent that we thought it would, which means that we can project fewer labor demands in the coming year. We've worked very hard on driving efficiency with our call takers, and we've also completed a lot of our transformational work to make us a better service provider, and so those costs are going to evaporate. Next slide, please. And I am trying to beat the clock here. I'll highlight two drivers. So on the lower cost side, we had an accumulated debt that we have now been able to retire. So catch-up amounts are no longer required as part of our levy. Driving higher costs, probably flag two. Investing in more dispatchers, that's our critical shortage. That's the thing that we miss the most. It's the hardest category of our employee to hire, train, and retain. It's a very demanding job. And then next generation 911. The 911 system is moving to an internet protocol-based system, likely in British Columbia in January. We're driving that transition. Unfortunately, along with that will come higher operating costs. The province has picked up all of the transitional costs up until this point, but beginning in 2027, that, unless the government of British Columbia changes direction, that will fall on local ratepayers. All right, one final point. ECOM went through a period, particularly in the police community, when we were not meeting our service level targets. We were really struggling to retain staff. We had a series of transition plans. We worked with external consultants to fix those issues. There were cost drivers associated to that. The province has decided that it was going to do an independent review directed by the Public Safety Ministry. That review is complete. That report is in the hands of the province. It is a report for the province, not a report for ECOM. We have yet to see the results of that, but I can tell you that there's been a close look at ECOM's governance, financial performance, and service delivery. So what we are hoping for is that we'll have a clear picture of the future direction for all of us. And I'll just close by saying, it's been, I think, a difficult issue for all of the South Island communities that had their service paid for by the province. It is a significant budget item. We recognize that. I think it's been very good for us that I think you appreciate that this is a provincial-driven initiative, not something that ECOM is volunteered to take on. But we do look forward to further engagement like this. So if you have any questions, if you want to tour VCBI, if you have questions about our agreements, please contact me, Nita Zaniker, or of course, Tyler Moore. And with that, I'll turn it over to questions.
Thank you very much. That's a great presentation. I will open up the council for questions. Councilor Day, you can start her off.
Thank you. Just uh, based on information that we didn't have before, I do really appreciate the presentation that you've provided. It's definitely a difficult issue for the community to pay for the services after the province has stepped out of the ring. And it sounded like you were saying that a provincial service is what's actually needed towards the end of your presentation. Did I hear you correctly?
Well, we certainly have a position. We think that the province should be more engaged in this space. It should ensure a more consistent funding model. It should set standards for police call taking and dispatch in the province. As a consolidated operation, it can be very difficult for us to meet extremes. To give you an example, you've got your detachment here serving multiple communities. The Vancouver Police Department is a client of ours. It's a very large department with very specific needs. And then you've got even smaller departments. For us to cross that spectrum without a target to aim at can be very difficult. But yes, we would like to see more provincial engagement.
So it's also very difficult for us to determine if we're being appropriately charged for the
Yeah.
services that we use because it's not data that we have. And even in the presentation with your pie charts there, we've got 2 large municipalities and 2 small municipalities, and then 10 smaller municipalities broken out. And there isn't any relative comparison of how much of that pie chart Colwood is actually truly using. Our actual data is nowhere reflected there. So we have no way of knowing if the invoice that we receive is high or low, whether we'd be better with a particular system this way or a different system another way. We're really left in a position of having to guess what's achievable. So I just wonder, is there real data that's available to us to justify the requisition?
Let me answer that in 2 parts. First of all, the data that we're currently using or the methodology for RCMP costing is based on the model that we inherited from the province, which is basically authorized strength. That said, we are as dissatisfied with the lack. Our levies are a little bit of a black box. We give you an amount of money, you have to assume that we've priced it out correctly and that you're getting the service that you need. We are working on a much clearer breakdown of what each of those levels of service costs. We'll be able to articulate that for you. We're also working on a cost allocation model that will be able to demonstrate on other criteria that are objective where you stand in that range. So we're not there yet. We won't see it in 2026. We are, however, aiming to have that in place for 2027 and beyond.
And my final comment is just that my personal experience with actually having had to call 911 is that having a model that covers such a vast area has made it difficult for call takers to know where you're calling from and what address you're looking for service at. So that's just been my personal experience where it's like, well, they've had to ask, what municipality are you in? And that is challenging with street names and all of that.
It is.
Yeah, so it's an important job, and it's also one that we need to be accountable for what we are paying for the service.
Thank you very much, Councilor Ward.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you for the presentation this evening. I would echo a little bit of what Councillor Day said. I'm a little bit concerned about the financial transparency and understanding what kind of value we're getting here. I think we're ahead of it in the sense that all of us wanted to see the results or the findings of this independent review, which was promised for summer of 2025, and we still await that. But I wonder if you've had any insight, any preliminary findings, anything that would allow you to address some of the key things identified, which went beyond, it was financial transparency, but governance of e-com was identified as a significant issue. Service levels, we know those remain a challenge. Staffing, the newspaper articles start in 2020 and go right up to September 2025, talking about insufficient staffing, wait times. Myself, just anecdotally,
I called a non-emergency number last week, Tuesday, with a minor complaint, was mishandled to the point the local RCMP were apologetic and indicated that they would speak to ECOM about how best to handle it. Mistakes were made, and I think the public's confidence isn't there in ECOM. Across the board, I know councillors in North Cowichan and elsewhere with similar concerns, and even without the findings of this review, there should be some things that we can do to improve that model, but yet we're still sort of looking at a pie chart that doesn't really give us any sense of what value the taxpayer is getting. So why should we trust that ECOM is moving in the right direction?
Well, I'm hoping that, so first of all, for the errors that may have been made, I apologize. We do have a breadth of newer call takers. Certainly, we do work with attachments and municipal officials if we get complaints, because we do want to rectify those. Secondly, with respect to the financial model, there are a couple of moving parts there. The reality for us is that we had embarked on a review of our financial model before the provincial review was announced. The decision was made ultimately by our board that we would pause that work because it required a fair degree of engagement with partners, and at the same time that EY, Ernst Young, the firm that was going to do the provincial review, would be doing the same thing. So they decided to put that on pause. We have been doing some additional work in the background, and Councillor, we're very aware that we need to do a much better job of articulating those costs and the drivers. And as I said, we're looking for something that we can measure objectively and that we can present to you, and you can look at the data and reach the same conclusions. But it will not be, unfortunately, for 2026.
I can appreciate that, and I think in fairness, rather than point the finger solely at ECOM, I think I would also levy my concerns towards Premier Eby and the BC NDP and the provincial government that have downloaded these costs to municipalities, haven't really provided you with a fair framework of governance across the province, and we still have communities without 911 service in this province. So the fault lies firmly at the doorstep of the provincial government, in my opinion, but I appreciate you coming forward to speak to it tonight. Thank you.
Thank you.
Very much, Councillor Ward. Councillor Jensen.
Well, thank you, Worship. I won't reiterate some of what's been said, but that was one of the notes I had. What have your discussions been with the province with regard to the insights that have arisen from this report?
We have not heard.
Okay.
We've had we invited the review. We were actively engaged in the review, but we, like everybody else, I believe, have yet to hear any of the results.
All right, that's fantastic. Well, maybe one day we'll get to have a look at it. I guess on the face of it, you're hearing a lot about the finances, and the RCMP inspector was here just before you guys, and you hear that our calls for service are largely the same. So if the same number of officers are going to the same number of calls, why are my costs going up, somewhere between 9 and 15%? I can't explain that to the public.
So I can't say that they're not going to go up 9 to 15%. I'm pretty confident on that. I think you're going to see a much lower number, below 9%, for some of the factors that I outlined. Secondly, it's true that the call volume increase that we usually see year to year has not happened in the Lower Island to the same extent. Non-emergency call volume has gone up. Emergency call volume has gone down a little bit. We're into contract negotiations with our union. That alone is going to present a challenge for us. The other issue is that ECVI as a collective has been understaffed for a while, been gradually trying to build up we need additional dispatchers. We're seeking to add additional supervisors. So there are cost drivers there. And part of the reason that the levy increase will be reduced over what we were originally forecasting is we're being a little bit more cautious about our ability to hire and train and get those people in place. So that will mean lower costs through 2026.
Yeah, thank you. So, there's a lot there, but are your financial statements publicly available?
I'm not sure that the statements are. I know that we publish an annual report that has a breakdown of revenue and expenses, but I would say the answer to that question is no if pressed, but that's something I can certainly determine definitively.
I'm not that interested. I just wondered, because I do know that overtime is an issue for you folks, and I've heard lots of fancy stories about people having to fly over at the last minute from the Lower Mainland and spend the weekend here and do dispatch services at our call center. So
we have done that periodically in order to make sure that we meet demand. I can give you a very specific example for the month of September. We had a day beginning with 29 staff call in sick.
Grief.
So patching those holes takes a little bit of scrambling.
All right.
So what I'm happy about is that we had staff come in to replace the people who didn't come in. I'm not happy that we didn't have that many people.
Thank you. Good luck with your
Thank you.
negotiations.
I just want to wrap this up just with a couple simple questions here, or maybe they're not so simple. I noticed that the majority of your costs are the direct costs of your employees.
Yes.
That's the biggest portion of it. So basically, your overhead is semi-fixed. I hate saying fixed because it's not fixed, but semi-fixed. So I guess I don't understand philosophically. I would have thought, we should have just got everybody with RCMP service across the province to be part of this, because theoretically speaking, our cost should be lower. You just look at it from the contribution margin side of it right now, right? You're covering off all the costs. So I guess you're not involved in this at all, but I just don't understand why they just didn't put a blanket over it, like from a fairness and equitable position. I just don't understand why they just didn't apply this right across the province. Do you know?
I do not know.
Okay.
I will say, I think when Ecom originated and began taking on this work, the idea was that it would grow and it would be effectively the dispatch and call taking service. That hasn't materialized.
So I guess my last question is for you, Mr. Johnson. Is it possible for us to ask directly to whoever to get the report? And if not, FOIP it?
We can always, under the Freedom of Information, request the report.
Okay, thank you. Well, thank you. I don't see any other comments or questions. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Yeah, I guess you guys take a beating.
It's been a bit of a rough ride in the last 4 years, but honestly, I think things are getting better. It's a slow climb though.
You keep on ticking.
But thank you for your engagement.
Okay, thank you very
Good night.
much. Okay, we'll move on to 8.3, and that's for you, Mr. Johnson. Bruce?
Thank you, Mayor Kobayashi and Council. This is the Youth Engagement Program Evaluation Update by Anne Downton, the Youth Coordinator. Sophie Pettigrew from School District. The recommendation is that Council receive this update on the Youth Engagement Program Evaluation Report, and that Council direct staff to proceed with next steps related to the creation of a West Shore Youth Strategy. And there is a presentation should you wish to receive it.
Please, sorry about that. Please.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. As indicated in the staff report, I'll be providing highlights from our program evaluation that recently took place. With me is Sophia Pettigrew. She is a student advocate with the Brookes School District, and her team within the Safe Schools Department have been an important partner in us developing and delivering programs to West Shore youth who face a multitude of challenges. So she'll be sharing some of her experiences throughout the presentation, and we'll be here for questions at the end. I started by providing you with a timeline of the Building Safer Communities Grant Fund, which began in 2026 and is ending in beginning 2022, ending March 2026. Also included some of the updates that we provided to council and the community. The other one I would add to this is 2 weeks ago, 2 representatives from Public Safety Canada came to receive an update on how the grant is progressing and to talk about the evaluation process and next steps in sustainability. And they were thrilled with the rollout of the grant. So in our submission to Public Safety Canada back in 2022 was the commitment to conduct a formal evaluation process. The consultant team that we chose has extensive local knowledge of the challenges that youth face through local landscape. Their experience engaging youth and capturing youth voice meant that they were well positioned to understand the background and hit the ground running for us. So they developed the online youth survey, developed focus group questions. They hosted the youth survey internally, facilitated and documented our focus groups, and also completed an initial summary of the findings. So over a 1-month period, we had 107 youth who directly participated in our targeted programs, participate in our online survey. The consultant also facilitated 9 focus groups with a total of 56 people representing youth, our partners in recreation, school district partners, social service providers, also all directly connected with the grant program. 2 weeks ago on October 14th, when Dr. Cook and Dr. Fenton were here, they talked about the importance of gathering that quantitative and qualitative data in order to demonstrate impact. And that's exactly the approach we took in this evaluation process. Do you mind? Thank you. So the programs piloted during the grant timeline have generated the following results. So according to the 2021 census, which I know is a little bit outdated, but there are approximately 11,000 youth that make up the West Shore municipalities, and we included Souk. Those are youth ages 11 to 18 in the community. To date, we've made approximately 22,000 touch points with West Shore youth, provided over 3,000 hours of programming, and approximately 100 hours of professional development. I want to go back to also what Dr. Fenton said 2 weeks ago, that the data is showing declining youth health and well-being, and some of those data sources I've included in the evaluation report that you've received in this package. She talks about the need to support youth health and well-being through a regional approach, which the grant has done. She talked about the need to address youth social isolation and their lack of hope for the future, which our grant programming has also done. So from the survey, we learned that 94% of youth participants experienced improvement in their overall well-being. That 84% showed an increase in connections. 77% said they felt more prepared to deal with their life stresses and day-to-day things that that go on in a youth lives these days. Youth also self-identified 333 ways that they have seen improvements, and you can see some of them listed there. And what's important to note is some of these are the protective factors that Public Safety Canada has listed as ways that youth build resilience, the way youth feel optimistic and hopeful about the future. But they also are those protective factors that help potentially prevent youth from engaging in crime and in problematic behaviors, and disengaging from community and school. You've heard me talk about some of these grant funded programs before. They include Hockey for Youth, Chefs on the Shore, extended youth room hours at West Shore Park and Recreation, adding mentors as an element into our program design, offering food safe first aid drop-in at Emery Hall, as well as some of the daytime pottery and cooking classes that Sophia is closely connected to. Before Sophia shares a little bit, I wanted to just say that in the focus groups, what we learned from educators and parents was that they said they saw a sense of pride develop in their young people's lives, that there was an increase in their confidence, that their mood improved. We also heard from youth directly that this was life-changing. A youth said that they were literally bedrotting, losing their social skills. And Sophia and her team were so pivotal in helping engage those youth, help them physically get out of the home, and youth trusted them to come and show up at some of our programs. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you for having me here. And firstly, I'd just like to express huge gratitude to the city of Colwood.
Could you move the mic closer to you?
Oh yeah, sorry. Oh wow,
Yeah.
that's loud. I just wanted to start by expressing huge gratitude to the city of Colwood and Anne for all of the work that went into this grant and allowing us to participate in it. As a student advocate, we are positioned to support kids who are starting to disengage from school or have become fully disengaged from school. And so as it relates to this grant, I've been most closely connected to these engagement groups, which are more targeted for kids who are facing a variety of complex challenges. And and so I have firsthand seen many examples of incredible opportunities for kids to get out of their homes, some of whom have essentially haven't been out of their homes since COVID. are isolated, no longer have friends, don't have the ability to use transit, and aren't engaging. So, yeah, I'm just here to share any examples and answer any questions around that.
Perhaps I'll keep going and then you can save your questions for Sophia if you have more, any. I think the stats speak for themselves that youth engaged in some of these training opportunities, recognize they gain new skills. They recognize that they now feel more confident applying for work or going looking for volunteer opportunities. And that 100% of our survey respondents said they'd already used those skills in their real life day-to-day experiences. So the results from the evaluation have highlighted the following key takeaways that can be used to develop a West Shore youth strategy. So we learned that impactful youth supports are most effective when we, of course, collaborate across sectors, when we remove the barriers to participation, when we integrate the safe adults and mentorship into programming, and when we create environments where youth feel safe, where they can be themselves, they can be welcomed, and where they tell us what they need. The BC Coroner's Service Death Review Panel has recently published a report where they talk about the importance of something called third spaces. So recognizing that school and home, which is where most youth spend the abundance of their time, aren't always safe spaces. So there's this need to have these third spaces in our community where young people can gather in order to foster connection, find sense of belonging. The report actually recommends that through the Union of BC Municipalities, that a few different ministries sort of collaborate in order to task municipal governments with identifying / inventorying existing facilities that can be repurposed for youth as third spaces. And so what this grant has done is allowed the city of Colwood to already explore what some of those might be. So expanding the access to the youth room at West Shore Park and Rec is one good example. The other is that we've been able to utilize Emery Hall in collaboration with SD62 and Washington Kids Foundation to use that as a drop-in space as well. Switching gears here, looking ahead, pleased to share that the City of Colwood was selected by Public Safety Canada and their partner, the Canadian Centre for Safer Communities. Do I stop?
Continue, please.
Thank you. Okay. I'll talk faster. As one of the 10 pilot sites across the country and the only pilot site in BC to be a part of this 2-year in-kind project that will begin by gathering Colwood-specific data in order to help support the building of a pilot project that will help amplify the protective factors that support community health and well-being, not just youth, but the whole community, but also help fill the gaps in the community that can sometimes lead to things like polarization and extremism. And so participating in this will build on that collaborative approach that we took with the Building Safer Communities Fund to make sure that these projects and solutions are community-driven, evidence-informed, and responsive to needs in Colwood. And the results of this initial phase of the data gathering will be instrumental in helping develop a successful West Shore youth strategy that supports the health, well-being, success, safety of young people in the West Shore.
Thanks very much, Anne. I'll open it up to questions from council. I'll start off with Council Ward.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, through the chair. Thank you, Anne. And sorry, I didn't catch your name.
Sophia.
Sophia, thank you. I appreciate it. Very valuable work that you're doing. I mean, we see in there 11,000 kids touched by this so far. It's kind of personal for me. I've experiencing mental health issues with a child for a number of years now. And the one piece that keeps coming out of my interactions with folks with Island Health and psychologists and psychiatrists and things is the importance of building that connection early. Much of what you talked about there, being able to provide a safe space for a child, being able to have other resources that they can speak to. If they're challenged with peers, that they've got somebody else that they can go to. So I really, really value the work that we're doing here. If you'd asked me a few years ago, I might have looked at it as just another line item in a budget, but I see firsthand the value that this can bring. And sadly, if we don't take action early with some of these youth, as you well know, they triage further into a system where help isn't available. In this province, we're woefully underfunded, and there is only one sort of advanced or last resort treatment program for youth in the South Island, the advanced program at Queen Alexandra, the intensive day treatment program, and the wait list is hundreds and hundreds of kids long. So, these are suicidal teens. These are teens that are on the brink of putting an end to it. And they can wait months, if not years, for treatment. So to me, I can think of nothing better than to invest time and money in. So I unequivocally support taking this next step and pushing forward. Youth are the future of our community, and we need to put our money where our mouth is and help them out. So you have my support and a lot of gratitude. Thank you.
Next. I guess I'll open up again, and thank you very much for what you do in the community. You've done an outstanding job. And I see a lot of value in the program myself. Councillor, uh, Councillor Grove and myself have gone 2 or 3 times now to what you've organized. It was kind of unorganized at the beginning, but it became fantastic. I can tell you that it's a fantastic program, fully supportive. The interesting thing is, early on, I thought, I see some value in this. Started talking with the other mayors about this. Actually encouraged them to go down and see it because, the funny thing is that Dave and I would ask them, where are you from? And I think the majority of the people were actually Langford people by far, but there was people from Souk, Machosen, a few Colwoodians here and there. But obviously it became very apparent to me this is absolutely going to have to be a regional thing. So I guess my question, where I'm going with this right now, what discussions have you had with West Shore Parks and Rec right now? Because this is the home for this, I think anyways. It doesn't belong to any one city. We all contribute, all 5 West Shore municipalities contribute to West Shore Parks and Rec. This is where whatever we're doing belongs, in my opinion, but please correct me if I'm wrong on that. But have you started any conversations with West Shore Parks and Rec?
Yes. As we start to develop a sustainability plan beyond the grant funding, they have submitted budget to the partners that would allow for continued funding that already exists within their facilities. What I would add to that is their youth programmer feels like perhaps they're getting close to capacity on some of those youth nights, which the youth night, it really is only one piece of the pie when it comes to the programming that we're offering. I think Sophia can probably speak to the value of having programming in community, particularly at West Shore Parks and Recreation.
Yeah, it's interesting because I came here tonight really focused on like all the benefits for the kids I know and the stories I know. And then as I listened to Inspector Rose speak, I realized like those are my kids on my caseload. Like a lot of the crime that we're addressing in this community, those are my kids. And like one of those kids is on the ice right now on Wednesdays side by side with our police officers, and it's the liaison officer that's tying his skates. And I think it's really like in those connections where we will see a shift in those youth. So so many of the kids that we've connected, like that I've been able to engage through the groups I've been connected to, are now accessing all of the other programming that's available to the public. So it really is it's a system, and this is one piece of the system. And the programs that I've been involved with are really like a stepping stone for those early, or like those younger kids that we're just trying to get out of the house right now. And, you know, who are also in what you speak to in terms of, you know, some of the horrific things happening with sexual exploitation and whatnot. You know, like those kids are in my pottery group. And, you know, because of that pottery group, they're connected to a friend, they're connected to 3 other supportive adults, they're attending school. Like there's all these pieces. So even though they're just small programs and my programs are pretty targeted to a small number of youth, I sit here tonight with greater clarity around the kind of social impact as well, or the social value for it, not just the value for these kids that I know.
So, you know, like I said, there's nothing wrong with what you said. So, you know, it's fantastic. It's all good stuff. It really,
Totally.
really is. I guess what I'm trying to get clear in my own head right now is that we're a piece in this, you know, we're just a cog in this whole cam right now, right? And I'm just trying to figure out. So I'm just trying to figure you, because you've come here and you said, what are the next steps? Well, I'm going to reverse the question right now to you, because I'm clearly trying to understand what you see the next steps. You're in the logical position to say, hey, City of Colwood, this is what we need you to do for us and whoever else. I mean, is it jointly bringing everyone together for presentation? Is it you going off to each of the city halls and doing a presentation? I'm just trying to, I don't have that clear picture right now. I don't have clarity in what you want to do. I'm afraid I don't want to give you wrong guidance, you know, and I know there's probably a specific will that you have. So what is that will so I can help you?
I can tell you what I've heard, and am such privilege being in this role because I'm a bit of a facilitator slash liaison with several different groups in the community. What I'm hearing is folks want a dedicated youth space, and I don't know if that's one or many, right? Youth need places to go. I also think that the reason this work has been so impactful is because I don't tell Sophia, hey, I'm running this program on the side. It's like she's like, I have these 8 kids that aren't attending. They're going to work well together. Here's what they're interested in. And I don't ask what school they go to, right? We ran a cooking program. We had one kid from Royal Bay, one from West Shore Secondary, one from Dunsmuir, one from Spencer, and one from Belmont. Like these were the kids that are ready to receive support and get out of the house. So I think it needs to be accessible by public transport. And I think it needs to be, if it's going to be impactful, it needs to be seen through a West Shore lens. It'd be very difficult to say, hey, to these 10, Sophia, I can only have space for 10 Colwood youth. I don't know that we'd see the same impact. You know, Dr. Fenton talked about our return on investment is 1 to 5, and that might be low. Would we see this kind of impact if we were targeting specifically Colwood youth? I don't know.
Okay, I hear everything you're saying, but I'm still trying to get to the root of it. Maybe you can help, Sandra, but because I'm looking specifically what you're looking from us. You know, you obviously came here for some direction, so I'm just trying to find what you're asking for right now.
Thanks, Mayor Kobayashi. Well, as you know, in the 2025 Service Review Council sort of resolved to maintain this position at the City of Colwood. And so I think our hope is that we can continue this work through a West Shore Youth Strategy, which would allow us then to approach other municipalities with the plan to divvy the costs to maintain such a service in a shared model. But I think that we're not quite there yet. And so our ask is that we can continue this work long enough to understand a really clear approach to continuing to serve youth in a way, like right now, we can't just go to Langford and say, hey, help us out, right? We need more data, and coming forward with the youth strategy would allow us to do that in a measured way that makes sense. That's the ask.
Okay, so, okay, I think I'm clear. I think I am. But regardless of where you're from, you want us to pay for it. Is that what you're saying to me? I just want to make sure I understand that.
Sorry, regardless of where you're from, I missed the last part you said.
Well, I mean, you know, because the majority of the people, like I said, are, I wouldn't say are even Colwood based. I'm not being
Right.
a Colwood centric guy, but I'm trying to be also responsible to our tax base right now, right? They
Absolutely.
want to see a return on investment for the citizens of Colwood.
Mhm.
And if we're part of that, but it looks like we're a small part of that right now. And that's why I've always pushed the fact that if you're asking me to go talk to the mayors and get them to buy into this, hey, you're asking me, that's what you're asking me. And I'm willing to do that.
Mhm.
Do you see what I'm saying? So
I do, yeah.
that's what I'm looking specifically. I think it's a harder sell for you to say, Mayor, you call, would just take this on and we'll look after everybody and we'll figure it all out after.
Mhm.
That just doesn't wash to me. Like, I think it's going to be difficult
Yeah.
with council, and council can speak differently. But if your specific ask is, hey, we need a champion to help us, you know, get this in, you know, as a West Shore
Mhm.
cost, heck, you got your guy.
Mhm.
I'll volunteer. I'll do that.
I think
But
that's
that's what I'm trying to understand right now.
yeah. Well, and I think what we've learned through this is it would be almost impossible to tease out just the Colwood youth
Yeah.
from our schools, from our recreation center. The West Shore is a region united. And so we need an approach to this work that is a region united, and absolutely an advocate is what we're after. And we have Anne's strength from these past years of working in this field to pull together a strategy to deliver to you,
Mhm.
to take to the other mayors, to make that a reality.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And the discussions have happened.
I know.
Okay. So, but one of the things that you can do a favor to me right now is I think this presentation should actually happen to at least two or no, three municipalities. The other ones are too small to worry about. I mean, if they want it, I think the more the merrier. But I think if you hit Langford for sure, you hit Souk and View Royal, I think they're the important ones. I think you're going to see that you've got a lot more support than you think you have right now. And the only other thing that I would say you do is you cost it out, like you have a costing right now. But look at a fair wage unit, I would do it based on population maybe. And just sort of say, you know, tentatively, this is your share. When they see that it's not this big number, the 6-figure number, it's a smaller number, you're going to find people are going to fall in line with this. That's my suggestion to you. And if you need some guidance and help with that, absolutely, we'll help you with that. But you're smart. I've seen what you've done right now. You're much smarter than me, but I'm just trying to help you sell it. So if that's the guidance you want, council, you certainly have other things to say, but I'm just trying to help you get through this right now. Go ahead, Councillor Day.
Thank you. I'm going to try to keep it short because I'm a big proponent of this and have seen a lot of different groups over the years in Colwood, going back probably 30 years. The interesting thing for me is the slide that you have about your key takeaways for the youth strategy. And there are 4 recommendations on that slide. And the 4th one is to increase the availability of safe spaces. And that's really important, especially with youth in our schools, because there does develop groups that work well together and groups that don't work well with certain other groups. And so I think it's really important that we have different locations available, not just a single location. So getting the other municipalities on board to help develop programs, contribute to this program, and maybe have satellite establishments in all our municipalities is going to be a beneficial thing, as well as trying to find supportive adult role models, the mentorship part. That is really important. And we have an age-friendly plan that specifically talks about finding ways to link our seniors with our youth. And there is a very good collaboration that could help pull things together. So I think there's a lot of interest in having both seniors and youth programming in all of our municipalities. And there may be linkages that are available through this West Shore Youth Strategy that don't exist anywhere else. So that's another feather in the cap of any delegation that goes forward to other municipalities. And nothing succeeds like success. And this program has done such good work and had such good evaluations that it's way more likely to get support at this point in time. I'll stop there just so as to not take up any more time.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Councillor Jordison.
Thank you, Mayor. I guess I just wanted to say that sometimes I'm the person that says, well, why should Colwood pay for it? That sort of thing. And this one I see very differently. I think that I think you're onto something, and I think that somebody has to start a pilot, somebody has to be a champion, and you've done such an amazing job. And I think that, this plays into a lot of youth aging out of care and that sort of thing too on the streets, homelessness, substance use and mental health and crime. And I don't think the province and the powers that be have actually caught on yet that to do the prevention is you're bailing out a sinking boat with. If you don't do the prevention, you're bailing out a sinking boat with a teacup forever. And I think that this is where we're at. So I just think that this is a lot of entrenched street homelessness starts when people are between 16 and 20 and have nowhere stable, or if nobody's assigned to catch them, they go straight to drug use, and so supported youth housing pathway is huge, and just them being supported all together. So I think this needs to go bigger in the West Shore, and I would be happy to stand behind that. So thank you.
Thank you very much. Councillor Grove.
Thank you, Mayor. Thanks for your report. It was great to hear more of what was happening, and having visited a couple of times, I sure can see firsthand. It's so obvious. The energy in the room is fabulous. And this reference to the budget for ongoing youth engagement of 117.8, is that kind of a solid number? Could you explain a little more what that contains? Just need to hit your microphone. So.
Thank you. With that number, what we assumed, or assumed is not the right word. What we anticipating perhaps that the partners would approve what's coming out of West Shore Parks and Recreation, with the increase that would allow for the continued programming that happens in their facilities to be ongoing. So that would allow for my salary and then a budget to amplify more work throughout the community.
Right, and you make reference to the West Shore Parks and Rec, obviously are contributing in some fashion, and they would continue with that work, although there's not a clear number associated with that. It's kind of part of the West Shore Parks and Rec facility operational. Sorry.
If I could, thank you. The West Shore Parks and Rec draft budget does include an amount around $104,000, but that represents their share of costs, what they estimate their costs are going to be to maintain the services that they are delivering. In our 2025 budget deliberations, we projected to continue this work, so the call would share. That was $68,700 in that year, and this year we haven't brought budgets forward yet. However, that is a piece that is still approved last year, but
coming forward again for council's consideration.
Okay, so we need this strategy, which I'd be more than happy to move this recommendation. But I'm just thinking that this related West Shore youth strategy to be developed sounds to me like it needs to be beefed up very like from day one with other partner, in other words, other municipalities in the West Shore participating and they're sharing what that would be. And I don't know if it needs to be added to this motion or the recommendation that somehow that strategy that comes back so that we only have until, I'm not sure, we don't have a full year's budget, right? The funding from the grant expires end of March, is it?
End of March, that's correct.
Yeah. It's just a matter of time. Yeah, thanks.
This 5-year financial plan includes the budget for this continuing
yeah,
position
I see.
based on that.
Okay, so that's taken care of. Okay, cool. Well, anyway, I would move the recommendation
Yeah, I'll just,
when it's time.
yeah, okay, I'll turn back to you. I think, Council Ward, you were looking to come up. Okay. I will take you're gonna move the recommendation then. Seconder is Council Ward. Further discussion on this? Let's see. Okay, Council Ward. That last one.
I just picking up on what Councillor Grove was going to suggest. I was actually looking to make the motion with an amendment, but maybe I would propose the amendment now just to amend onto it that staff work on a potential plan to engage with West Shore partners on basically an expansion or continuation of the program across the region. I don't need to put a whole lot of extra on there, just a plan to engage with them on it. And then I think background for that really, and not that I need to motivate, but we know that obviously, you know, it appeals across the board to youth from across the region. And I think this is something that, you know, you've got the ability, Mr. Mayor. I think you can sell this to a few folks in other council chambers. I mean, I think be hard pressed to say no when you look at the stats. You know, Langford in particular, if we know the bulk of the people are coming from Langford, I think you'd find a sympathetic ear there. I would hope View Royal the same. You know, it just makes sense, and I think we owe it to get in front of them, because you can't do a cost benefit analysis on this, but the benefit to the taxpayer is there. The children are children of taxpayers, right? So there is a trickle down there. So it's something that I think if we can appeal to them in a humanitarian way and provide some real data about who is taking advantage of this, then maybe we can make it more of a regional partnership. So I would just make that amendment if I will.
Okay, friendly amendment? Yeah. Okay with that, Council? Okay. Absolutely. So yeah, I agree with what you just said there. It's how do you measure fixing things upstream? Like it's kind of a funny thing, right? Because thought about that and I just thought, geez, that's tough. You just know that intuitively, you know that it's going to do something, right? You're trying to figure out what that outcome is. But yeah, you're right. Sorry, Councillor Day. I digressed a little.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm appreciating the amendment, and forgot to say when I did have the mic that it occurred to me that you know, crime in Colwood isn't exclusively committed by Colwoodians. So when we're addressing the needs for our youth in our community and reducing the uh, the negative impacts of not having what they need, you're also addressing shoplifting. You're also addressing vandalism. You're also addressing a lot of other things. And I would think that it does matter with youth. I think youth have a very good moral compass that suggests that some people are really worth going the extra mile to protect when they've been there for the youth. So I think that it's very worthwhile to do the program, even if Colwood is supporting the program to exist and other peoples may not all come to the table at the same time. But it's also important to present to those other councils what we're actually doing, what is actually costing and what we're actually hoping they will contribute and what we would do with it. Which is what I believe Mayor Kobayashi was getting at in his discussion of trying to be an advocate for this program and help to sell it, was to have that package to hand out to say, this is what we're asking you for. We're asking you for $30,000 this year if everybody gets on board, or $80,000 and nobody else gets on board. But I think that that ask is what we're looking to develop.
Okay, thank you very much, Councillor Jensen.
Thanks. I'll be brief as the West Shore Parks representative. This is being well discussed at the board level on, and let's not reinvent the wheel. All the representatives are right there, and that's the place to start. And Langford is well aware of sort of their responsibility as far as the data and how it impacts our community. So there is much discussion about budgets, and we're very much live to the ending of the funding and what the next steps are. So let's start there and not reinvent the wheel on our own, because you might be able to do it all at once. Location. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Appreciate those comments coming from a board member. At this point in time, this is the resolution that's on the table on the floor right now. And I had a mover and a seconder. Any other discussion? At this point in time, I'll call the question. Any opposed? Seeing none, motion carries unanimous. Thank you very much. I'm going to take a 4-minute health break, please. Thank you. We're going to move on to 8.4, the urban forest strategy. Mr. Johnson, introduce the speaker, please.
Thank you, Your Worship, members of council. This is the urban forest strategy. Gord Blvd is here, the manager of parks, to answer any questions that council may have. What you'll notice on the agenda is you'll see two recommendations. There was one that was a staff recommendation. That staff recommendation is at the bottom, which in effect was made a recommendation to the committee of having a tree canopy target of 33%, and the committee came back with the canopy target of 40%. That's why this item wasn't on the consent agenda, is because this was provided to council for your feedback. Mr. Blvd is here to answer any questions that you might have.
And we do have a presentation by the consultant as well. This just a note that this presentation, a lot of the information you're going to see on this presentation was part of the phase 1 presentation we did as well, including the 3 scenarios. And the work that we've done up to date now on those 3 scenarios will be on that presentation as well. We have done some, we are working on implementation and costing as well as the bylaw. Those are not in the presentation, but we will be able to speak to them and answer any questions that we have so far, that you have, that we can answer so far on those as well. So tonight I have Catherine Barris, who's been the lead from Urban Systems with us, and she'll be walking through the presentation.
Great, thank you very much.
Okay, thank you, Gord, and thank you, Mayor and Council. I am going to go through the presentation really quickly because most of you have seen a lot of it before. It's just really a reminder of what we did through this process. So slide, please. I don't think I have, yeah. Yeah, we'll go, like I said, quickly through the context, key findings, etc. I'm going to focus on the tree canopy targets and what they mean, because I know that's the main point of discussion tonight. So the overview is people in Colwood love their urban trees, and we did a phase 1 a couple of years ago. It collected data, and now we've completed phase 2 and have this draft strategy ready. The analysis involved a lot of evaluation of the tree canopy, looking at policies, and then forecasting and doing the scenarios that we're going to talk about. We did an engagement process through various means. We had a survey, and we had pop-up booths. I would say that we didn't have very high numbers of participants, but we had great quality comments from the people that we did speak with. So there's an engagement survey. The urban forest is very important to people. Top 3 priorities, this one is relevant, are to have healthy trees are in natural areas, parks, and along roads as their top 3 priorities, noting those are all public spaces. And then I think confirmation really of the benefits and concerns related to the urban forest. At the engagement pop-ups, people were a little bit more focused on private land, so wanting to see strengthening of the protection of private and development lands for trees on those lands, enhancing tree planting programs, and a boulevard tree initiative. The values of the urban forest, I think we've talked about a lot in the past. There are many environmental, social, and economic values. Next. And there are lots of challenges. We are losing the urban forest in most communities, mainly because of development. Climate impacts are another one. And it's difficult to manage. There's a lot of work to do to manage urban trees. We looked at all of the documents that the city has that talk about the development process and that talk about the values of trees. So now getting into some of the data. So this is your tree canopy distribution. The dark green are trees, the light green are permeable surfaces that are like grass or shrubs, and then the pink is impervious. So you see the pattern of the tree canopy. And we have monetary valuations of the canopy that were possible because of the extensive analysis work we did, including field work. So, you know, people don't really recognize all the ecosystem services offered by trees for these in these various ways, and it's really worth a lot. The city would have to pay a lot more and would have much more environmental impact if you did not have the trees that you have. So we looked at the tree canopy by land use. Obviously, it's very variable. This is sort of land use and different kinds of areas within the city. The overall tree canopy in the city, including all lands, is 40%. This was as of the date of this analysis, which was actually 2021, because that's the last point where we had really good data from LiDAR. The tree canopy for the urban portion, so excluding Royal Roads and most of CFD, is 33%. Looking by neighborhood, you obviously have neighborhoods that have higher canopy, and again, the federal lands have the highest, and the undeveloped lands, and so this is that distribution. We looked at tree canopy by ownership. So 43%, the municipal land has a 43% canopy. Private land has a 31% canopy. Those are probably the most relevant ones. Well, road rights of way have a 21% canopy. So all of those become relevant when we start to look at scenarios. For tree canopy projections, what we did is we took the OCP, imagined it fully built out, and said, okay, if current practices, status quo approaches continue, what will the canopy be in these various land uses? So just focusing on the ones that will change significantly, hillside and shoreline neighborhoods are the ones undergoing the most significant development. Their canopy will decrease from 43% to 29%. Colwood Corners will decrease from 27% to 18%. The single family neighborhoods we have going up just a touch, but that's not a huge change. And so overall for the city, the canopy will go from 33% to 30% if nothing changes and we see the development that's projected. So we prepared 3 scenarios. The first one is scenario 1 is status quo. So if you don't change any practices, development proceeds as expected according to past patterns, the canopy will be approximately 30%. Scenario 2 is based on retaining your canopy at 33%. So to do that, some things have to change. So in the bright yellow are the proposed canopies that would have to change on private land, and in the blue are the tree canopy areas that would have to change on public land. So Colwood Corners, it would have to be increased a couple of percent from 18 to 20. Hillside and shoreline neighborhoods would have to go again up a couple percent. We didn't do drastic increases because it's very difficult to achieve. On parks, those would have to go up. So we need more tree planting within parks. We would need more tree planting in the single family neighborhoods and Seaside Village beyond what's already happening. And then also within road rights of way where the canopy would have to go from 21% to 23%. Scenario 3 is a little bit more ambitious in terms of tree canopy, and it is saying, okay, well, what do we have to do to achieve a canopy of 35%? And so it's really the same areas that are the focus because other ones are just too hard to change. And so you can see those same areas I just mentioned would each have to go up even more. So we have done some analysis of what this looks like in terms of planting trees, especially on the public lands. To get additional trees within the private developments, it's a question of beefing up the tree protection bylaw and the monitoring and enforcement of the tree protection bylaw. So I think that's So that I think is the guts of what you want to talk about tonight. We have a vision. I think again, I think it's all the wonderful things that you want to get from your urban forest. You could carry on here. We'll go through the rest quite quickly again. So our goals and objectives. The first ones are about protecting and enhancing the urban forest through better tree planting standards and targets. The second one is about updating your policies and practices to protect and maintain trees more effectively than you are today. And go to the third one. The third one is about the role of the community in helping to recognize the importance of the urban forest and help in the management of it, planting of trees, taking care of trees, things like that. So as Gord said, we are proposing a 33% target as being ambitious, but not terribly ambitious or greatly ambitious. And these are the numbers that were on that slide of the areas that would have to increase beyond what would happen if we don't implement these targets. And as Gord said too, we're working on an implementation plan. I'm not expecting you to read that at all, but what we're doing is we're looking at all the recommendations and putting them into timeframes and estimating approximate costs at this stage. And so really the main cost items are the staff needed to help implement this strategy and the cost of planting additional trees on public lands. And so those are the main two dollar costs. A lot of the other recommendations are really tasks that city staff could do as part of the work that they're already doing. So that's a quick overview. I'm very happy to take any questions.
Thank you very much. That's a great presentation. I'll open the floor to council for questions. Councilor Grove, you can start us off.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm just trying to clarify when you're talking about 33% here in the recommendation, and in the graph you're talking about the entire city of Colwood at 40%. So this 33% is what definition? Sorry.
So that's excluding the federal lands. It's excluding Royal Roads and CFB Comox.
Right, which is shows at 33% now, roughly, or 32.7.
Correct.
Which is the status quo then.
Well, it's what you have today, but you will not have it tomorrow if things progress as they are going. So the current trajectory is for the tree canopy to go down. So to stay at 33% requires some special efforts.
We need to increase it 3% to maintain 33, sort of thing.
Yeah, sort of.
Yeah, well, right. You have to make that effort.
Exactly.
Spend that money. Yeah. So the effort referred to moving this like 1%. What can you put that in a term that I can get my mind around what that means? Is that like 100,000 trees to add a 1% canopy cover? Does that mean $10 million, like, or $100,000? Like, is there anything at all I can relate to in terms of how unreasonable 40%, for instance, would be as a target compared to say 33 or 35?
I do have some preliminary numbers in front of us as we're trying to work through this implementation. So for scenario 2, which is the maintain the canopy of 33%. So that's maintaining our canopy as it is now. You know, we're looking at roughly $3 million to do that. That includes park trees, which are the majority of the trees that we're going to get. You know, that's where we can plant the most trees. But we're also looking at trying to do it on the boulevards, the private lands, the development areas, that sort of thing. That's where the big challenge comes in, because we're already pushing developers and doing what we can. Like, you know, when I'm when I'm looking at plans that developers for, I'm like, can I put a tree here? Hey, there's a spot right here. We can put a tree here. We can put a tree here. So it's, but what we have to do is a lot of those areas we're not meeting, or we can't meet the soil volume needed for the urban tree. So that includes using structural soil, which costs a lot more money to do for planting trees. It includes soil cells, which are incredibly expensive, but work. We know they work in the urban areas. So this is where this money is spent, and this is just trying to get those trees in those areas. So I think the total number of trees in scenario 2 in parks, and correct me if I'm wrong, is the 3,400 would be the total amount of trees we would need to do to keep that canopy. So 3,400 trees, majority of those being in parks. And whereas 35% was closer to 7,000 trees at an elevated cost of closer to $6 million for 35%.
Okay, that helps a great deal. And I have one comment, or a question around the mature trees. So over my 30 years in Colwood, I've noticed quite a few of the big trees that have come down, and oftentimes there's nothing replaced, like if it's a dead tree or something, or 2 small trees are planted perhaps. But the replacement coverage in terms of the urban forest canopy, right? You're talking about today that little twig gets put in the ground and it's a very small footprint, but someday it'll grow into a mighty oak and become a big footprint. Is there any kind of that growth scenario? Is like a forest grow, what, 10% a year? Or is there some logic behind that?
I think Catherine might be able to answer a little bit better than me, but I can tell you that these scenarios that we're trying very hard to keep the cost per tree down. So that includes a kind of a hybrid approach where we can use seedlings, but we're also going to use some bigger trees in areas, especially for doing mass plantings of smaller, you're planting tens of thousands of trees, and that would be great for park areas. But how many of those trees are really going to come to maturity? It's quite a small percentage of those trees.
Thank you. And the other question I have is shrubbery. Does that show up in the canopy images? And is it strictly, does it have to be a tree? There's a lot of shrubs and hedges and so on round and about. And I live on Seaside where there's quite a bit of the mature. It's probably planted in the late 60s, early 70s. They've grown quite large, some of them. So anyways, just curious what kind of plant.
Some large hedges will come through as canopy. But I mean that you're looking at like a Lalande hedge that's been let go for 20 plus years, and it's essentially, depending on how long your hedge is, but 30 individual trees that have grown into this big giant hedge.
So maybe Colwood could encourage individuals to plant on private. There's a lot of big front lawns from the 70s that have some nice landscaping shrubbery around the house, but nothing, just a big lawn. And that lawn doesn't seem to be used for anything, maybe parking a trailer, but we could plant some trees on our front lawns, perhaps would help a great deal. Thank you.
I can answer. Do you want me to answer the question about the time frame?
Yes, please.
So we've assumed generally a plus or minus 10-year time frame for the development, because that's really what an OCP, it's kind of supposed to be 5 to 10 years. And when we did these projections of the canopy and the trees being planted, we took the canopy of those trees that at approximately 10 years of age. Like, you can't account for anything, but that's the proxy we're using. And so those dollar values that Gord gave you also could be spread over something like a 5 to 10 year period as well. So we're not talking about, going out and spending millions right away. It can be spread out over time, and that's kind of how we're working all those scenarios.
Great, Councilor Wilson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just wanted to add some context to the conversation from a regional perspective. I did a little bit of research on tree canopy in other municipalities. And Saanich has a long-term goal of 44%. Oak Bay, a long-term goal of 40%. Esquimalt is 40%. View Royal at 29%. With no net loss. Langford and Sydney are still currently developing strategies, but nothing has been published yet. The average regional comparison shows average canopy targets in CRD urban municipalities is 38%, with a median of 40. So I think that the 33% is below the regional average and below the targets of municipalities with similar levels of urbanization and growth pressure. So I just wanted to know if you could speak to that. I do feel that 33% is low for the city of Colwood. I'm inclined to support the committee, the Parks and Environment Committee recommendation of 40. It doesn't mean, it's a target. It doesn't mean that it's, it's necessarily set in stone, but I was hoping you could speak to that a bit, either Gord or Catherine.
Catherine?
Well, it's we try to be realistic. I guess that's the main thing. I mean, I would love to see a target of 40%. I do this work because I'm a tree lover. The question is, can it be supported? And so when we were developing these scenarios, we had some guidance from staff and conversations about, well, let's try to set a target that we think we can achieve. And so really it's a judgment call whether you set it higher, and we can definitely crunch those numbers and figure out how many trees it'll require. One of the other challenges becomes finding space for those trees. So even in parks, when you have to consider all those sports fields and playgrounds and courts and all those other amenities that are in parks, it's not that easy to find enough space for trees to significantly boost the canopy. And then the same is true along roads where, as Gord pointed out, it's much more expensive because of the challenges getting the sufficient soil volume. So we were balancing, it is council's decision, obviously, and but those were the things we were thinking about.
Thank you, Catherine.
Thank you very much, Councilor Day.
Thank you. I really appreciate the report and the level of detail that's involved. I also have looked at what's around the region, and one of the things that stands out to me, especially even in tonight's presentation, is the lack of consideration for more retention, especially of the significant trees. And the area that was also identified in the report, hillside and shoreline, a lot of those are areas that were traditionally less targeted for development because of the hillside issues and stormwater issues, etc. And those particular properties often have more mature stands of evergreens trees on them currently. So it becomes a matter of trying to retain those trees. And I also recognize that sometimes the older evergreens are not as easy to keep, but at the same time, they're areas that have been very successful. So is there any recommendation in regards to retaining more mature trees on lands where they have not yet been disturbed?
Or do you want to take that, or do you want me to?
Yeah, I can try a little bit, and then if you can help out with that one as well. I mean, we do look at some of the strategies in the urban forest strategy. Is definitely looking at trying to retain trees on development. It is really challenging to do that, and I know that we do have new strategies in place already with building permits where we don't allow trees like what happened close to Havenwood, where we had a clear cut before anything really happened on that that property. So being able to, you know, not let that happen again, so that we can retain as much as we can for as long as we can, and then so we are doing things like that, and part of the strategy is definitely looking at ways that we can retain those. It is very challenging. A lot of the development land that we have left is our very treed areas, the forested areas, greenfield areas. That's the majority of the developable area that we have left in Colwood. So it does make it extremely challenging for those. But those are definitely strategies that we're looking at, is trying to retain those trees on, and mature trees. And I believe that the bylaw coming forward does have some language in retaining significant or mature trees in that bylaw as well. And if you have anything to add to that.
Well, I guess mainly just to say that our review and rewriting or upgrading of the tree protection bylaw is the main tool that can be used in that regard to protect, to put more focus on trying to protect the large existing trees, and just through the various provisions in that bylaw.
Okay, just, I don't know if perhaps it's because the draft urban forest strategy, it hasn't been made a bylaw yet, but since that tree bylaw came forward in Colwood, I don't believe very much protection has occurred as a result of it. It seems like every application for tree removal has been approved, so I don't feel that, in honesty, I'm not trying to be hard on anyone. I'm just saying it hasn't thus far worked. So my question is, how do we make it work? And I'm trying to find a way to do that. And I think, honestly, it comes down to saying that not all things can be true at the same time. There may have to be some limitations to developable land based on that there's currently a good amount of forest there and it's a good site for forest retention. That might be something that we need to wrestle with, but I think the goal of 40% is the right goal within the context of our region and within the context of climate change. We may have to find ways to do it. And there's probably more places for trees in Colwood, but what we need to do is identify them and maybe protect them. So I'll leave it at that. There's others who wish to speak.
Thank you very much, Councillor Jordison.
Thank you, Mayor. I think I agree as well that it should be 40%. And I think just like a developer has to fit a building on a lot, they should also have to make room for trees and plant trees. And I don't know what the percentage is, but it appears that a lot of developers take the money option and don't actually replace trees, which puts a lot of onus back on the Parks Department, which, I'm not sure what could be done about that. But, I think that there's other places, playgrounds are being built and, set up for people. And then parents go and watch their kids play sports in the blazing hot sun with no protection. There's places that these could go. There's parking lots. There's, we want to build these wonderful big buildings. Why can't we put tree and gardens on the top of these buildings and try to do things different? I think that it's, these are the complaints that I hear all the time, that, we don't have the trees, and, when they're gone, they're gone. And I think Colwood maybe can take that opportunity to say that, we welcome building, but we also need to retain our tree canopy and look after it. So that's just my thoughts. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Ward, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
I think I'd like to take a different view. Oftentimes you get a different perspective when you look at what other communities are doing. And Councillor Olson raised, Saanich, for example. And I mean, are we trying to simply arrive at a number and say, okay, we're doing great because we have 40%? Are we doing great because we have 35%, whatever it might be? Saanich, for example, they talk about a 43%, tree coverage amount. Sounds great on paper, right? It blows us out of the water. But then you learn that, rural Saanich, which is largely ALR land, it's just mature forest. The rural canopy accounts for over 56% of that. When you dig in a little bit further, you realize when you talk about urban areas in Saanich, the Saanich Core, Tillicum, Quarry, UVic area, Shelburne, North Quadra, the cover is below 30% in all of those areas. So, it's apples to oranges, right? When we talk about these other communities, just like here, the tree coverage, in some areas where there's mature forest is going to be much higher than it is in, Royal Bay. So are we trying to find a blanket number that covers the whole community, or are we like, what are we trying to get at? And I guess what I'm saying is the why behind it. So Saanich, I really like their approach where they came up with a 330-300 rule. And what that means, and it sounds a little altruistic, but I like it, is that every resident in Saanich, regardless of your type of housing, wherever you live, should be able to look out of a window in your home and see 3 trees. That's the 3. The 30 is that regardless of what part of the community that you live in, you have a 30% tree canopy coverage. So whether you're, for example, here, whether you be in Royal Bay or whether you be in Triangle Mountain, wherever you are, you should have that. And what it talks about is equity, right? It's equitable access to green space, because it's not good enough to say that, okay, the wealthiest part of town has great tree canopy, but a whole bunch of other people live, as Councillor Jordison said, under the blazing sun watching the soccer game. I mean, a community would have tree coverage throughout the community. And the last piece is, so 3, and then we had 30, and then 300 was in reference to everybody being within roughly 300 meters of a public park or green space. And that feeds into their park strategy, which is, if you're in an urban area, you live in a condo building and things, you should be within 300 meters of a place you can take the dog, take the kids, just get outside, be in the trees. And to me, that speaks, to what you're trying to build in terms of the community. Is it's not about a number on the paper, throwing a dart at a dartboard and saying we're at 33 or 40 or 35. It's about livability and access to the green space. So condo dwellers don't bake in the hot sun, and the wealthiest elite don't have single family homes down a long driveway surrounded by huge towering oaks and other mature trees. Like it's about community. So I'll be honest with you, I have trouble with all of these recommendations, because the more realistic one from a cost perspective and reality of where we're at today is to be down in the 30s, low 30s, right? That's the truth of what we see. 40 is what the committee's come up with, because I suspect that they're very green oriented and they want to enhance the livability of our community. But it's not necessarily realistic either. So I really like Saanich's approach. I mean, that to me is something that, that speaks to what we're trying to achieve in Colwood. And I think it also speaks to some of the other things that were brought up, like retention. If I can see 3 trees from my house today and there's a development proposed, you want to cut down 2 of them, what are we going to do to fix that? Can we keep those 3? Because now there's a shift here. Now it recognizes it's a shift entirely in thinking and how we approach things, and it dovetails into parks, it dovetails into development. But at the end of the day, I thought it was pretty innovative, and it'd be hard pressed to find one of these other numbers that work. So I'd be interested in hearing from maybe Gord on that idea, and our expert here, Catherine, too. But I really thought Saanich, for all the grief I like to give them, I thought they were ahead of the curve on that one.
Thoughts, Gord?
I've always liked that 300 as well. I thought it was a pretty neat idea as well. Yeah, I think equity is a huge part of this as well. We do know, we do have a little bit of a shift in Colwood, where older neighborhoods in Colwood do have the larger tree canopy. It does. But equity does play a big part in it. Once again, personal opinions aside, I believe that striving to get the best canopy possible for the city is the best way to go. And being able to achieve that even makes it, a better way to go. Doesn't mean you can't achieve a higher canopy over a longer period of time. So it's just, it just takes, what you want to do and what you want to spend and how long you want it, you want to over however long it's going to be to get to those targets. I do believe that it is important to go off a base target like a 33%, knowing that this is where we are now. And we need to be able to measure that and reach those goals and that sort of thing. So I think it's important to have those percentages in there. Yeah, I mean, that's my feelings on that. I don't know if Catherine, if you have any.
Yeah, I can add something. Looking at Saanich, for example, and their 40% is looking at the entire city, including the rural area. For Colwood, we've chosen to only study the urban area because it's where the city has most control. But if you want to be more comparable with the other communities in the region, we can report the citywide canopy, including the federal lands. What we're trying to do is just be realistic with each neighborhood. 330, 300, everyone is bouncing it around these days. And I agree, it's a fantastic concept, but it's hard to apply equally everywhere. And I'm happy to add it to the strategy as something to think about. But so for example, in Seaside, you're not going to get 30 without significantly affecting what the developer can do. And if the city is willing to take that on, it would require working with planning and perhaps changing some of the land use regulations, because they would have to change if you're going to increase the canopy that much higher than it already is. But it's striking me that for comparison with the other communities in the region, perhaps we should be reporting on the entire city and still looking at the breakdown by land use and neighborhood and such. Just something to think about.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Catherine. And that's the perspective I actually have right now. I think it's unfair. We're comparing apples and oranges. I do realize that that number was the more urban area, didn't include railroads. But, if you look at Colwood as a biosphere right now, you include the railroads land, we're in pretty good shape, actually. That's what I see from your numbers. And so I guess, yeah, I mean, I don't know how to call this, to tell you the truth. I don't know. I guess the one thing I did hear you say, for us, in order for us to achieve 33%, you did say it's $3 million, about $3 million, the costing. So what is it for us to maintain 40%? What's that cost?
We don't know that yet.
Oh, it's got to be more than that.
Yeah.
So
we don't know because we haven't done a 40%.
Okay, that's my whole point. So I'm going back to the late 70s, early 80s right now. It was the thing to do back then, because Harvard Business Review said we shall do this. They came up with these things called BHAGs, big, hairy, audacious goals. And so, hey, all the companies jumped aboard. Hey, we're going to do this. They jumped aboard. And the cost was just absolutely atrocious. Like it just went out of the world. They all failed. Not one big, hairy, audacious goal company made it. They failed at their strategies. They failed because that's exactly what they were. They're pipe dreams, big, hairy, audacious goals. And they couldn't afford them, number one. Number two, and they were failing to meet them, that everyone just said, this is just absolutely useless. And they all sort of died. So I want realistic goals. I think that's what we have to have. And actually, after reading Catherine's report, I think, Catherine, you were the author of that report, the report, right? And it made sense. It made a lot more sense to me, to tell you the truth. And that 40% number, like it was a big, hairy, audacious goal. It wasn't based on anything scientific. There was no numbers with it. And so I'm just being a realist right now, just a realist. And like I said, and again, we're comparing apples and oranges again, because I think we're better off than what we think we are because we have that federal land right now. I'm not saying that, we should just rely on that. I think, some of our other policies that we have in place about tree replacements, I think it's all good stuff. It's contributed to it, but there were so many factors that I just couldn't get my head around all this stuff, to tell you the truth. And so my own conclusion was, well, I just don't think going to 40%. I mean, like I said, that's a pipe dream, and it's going to end up costing us a lot of money. It doesn't make sense. We're not going to achieve it. We're going to be frustrated. But that's just my opinion on this right now. Like I said, I couldn't find the evidence to back it up. Like why the 40%, the cost, everything else, all the other factors. So I was quite happy with the recommendation of the original report, 33%. Couldn't convince myself to get off that number actually. So that's just me. Councillor Day.
Thank you. I'd like to move the recommendation from the Parks and Environment Committee meeting, and just to motivate that, I'm really looking for council to understand that if we don't retain our tree forest canopy, we may end up needing to, in fact, I'm quite sure we'll end up needing to build very expensive buildings to protect people when the heat waves hit and the heat domes are here. And there's a real public health risk of being in a place where it's increasingly hot and difficult to live in. And Colwood was not exempt from that heat dome. And retaining those old veteran trees does take in more carbon than the young saplings that we plant to replace them do. So in order to have a place in your park or on your street to escape the heat, these trees are going to provide a valuable service to all of Colwood for free. That, well, not exactly free, but free to the residents to go and stand under a tree and feel the breeze and be able to be outside when it's hot. And it isn't going to be the same 10 years from now as it was even 5 years ago. So I think it's really important that we have a high goal. Maybe we'll achieve it, maybe we won't. We need to retain the existing large trees that we have, and we may have to make some trade-offs to do that. But I think that's a worthy goal that we can try to reach through better management. Since I've lived in Colwood 40 years now, when I first arrived here, the biggest controversy in town was the clear-cut logging of the top of Triangle Mountain. And I won't mention the name of the developer who was associated, but his name was regularly bandied around town about it. Everyone knew that story. There wasn't anyone who didn't. And since I've been on council, I've watched whole swaths of the Latory Valley become deforested and replaced with rock walls and little tiny hedges and lots of buildings and rocks. So we do have the ability to do things differently. And I'm not asking us to tear up what's been done before. I'm just asking us to move forward in a better way.
Thank you. Open discussion. I am going to speak against this. And it's not because I'm some kind of I want to develop everything. It just doesn't make sense to me right now. I'd like to look at every one of you right now in your own homes. Do you meet that requirement right now? I would say a couple of you do. There's no doubt about it. The rest of us are in situations where we can't. I live on a big freaking rock, for example. Very lucky I get one tree right now. But I just think, what is the cost? Again, we're making a decision. We don't even understand what it costs us. So what are the costs? Is it going to take a little more effort on our side to figure out what that cost is? Because we better understand this. Because you're making a decision, and we shouldn't be making decisions unless we do understand that cost. So that's my biggest pushback on this right now. Anyways, that's my opinion. Councillor Jordison, go ahead, please.
Thank you, Mayor. So you just said we don't understand the cost. Why don't we have that information tonight? It was on there for a recommendation at 40%, so it would have been probably good to have that information for tonight's discussion. Just my thought. I think there's a lot of us at the table that might be able to say, well, maybe not a lot of us, but maybe in this room that could look out and say they can't meet the 330, 300 rule either, or whatever, or they can't see 3 trees or whatever. And so I just think it's a concern, and we've heard from Scenic Friends of Victoria, or I have Havenwood Park, sorry, come forward saying that they're ready to help, and they do a tremendous job. And I just think that it's a loss. We're missing an opportunity if we don't try to aim high. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Ward.
To firmly straddle the fence here, Mr. Mayor, if I will. I was looking at some other communities where I grew up in the Comox Valley, for example, where they're down around 29% or so, but a lot of their canopy initiatives give a range. They say, 30 to 33 to 35%, 33 to 40%. I mean, why are we fixated on a singular number? Like, if we go with 40 and we get to 39, did we fail? If we go to 30, we say 33 and we're at 32.8, did we fail? I mean, this seems to be, we're making a mountain out of a molehill. It's an ambitious goal, but I don't think we need to set a firm target. So, for example, there's things like the Green Municipal Fund through FCM, where they can provide up to $10 million in project funding for tree planting. Well, if you got $5 million towards tree planting, I'm more inclined to go, yeah, okay, let's make it 36%, 37%. I mean, if you knew you were going to get that. Now, grants don't open up again until 2026. Maybe you get nothing and you go, okay, well, down in the bottom 30s is realistic for us financially. But I don't think we're under any pressure to make a decision this evening. I think you're right. It would be helpful to understand what the committee recommendation would cost. The committee made that recommendation clearly without cost information attached to it. It was an emotion-based decision, and that's one of the issues I have sometimes with committees, is that it's easy to make a recommendation, but if we then are sitting at a council table and we're faced with something that doesn't have a robust, supporting documentation behind it, we risk making the wrong decision. So personally, I'd rather defer this entirely or seek a range. So in fact, I'll just do that. I'm going to make a motion to defer until such time as we obtain information from the city as to the cost of a 40% tree canopy. And also any exploration into available funding mechanisms that could support enhanced tree planting in Colwood.
Okay, that trumps the original motion, I believe. Can I get a seconder? Okay, Councillor Jensen. Open it for discussion on the deferment. Councillor Day.
Thank you. I never saw anything about any costs in the report, so I wasn't expecting this to be a cost discussion. So we do an OCP. We don't talk about the costs for doing the OCP. We do land use amendments without doing the cost to the city. So there's quite a few decisions like this that we make without looking at the costs. And I'm not saying that's wrong, but when we get to the implementation, that's when we're going to know the costs. So I think that's when those decisions are made. I'm fine to wait and get more information. I would just counter with how much cost have we already left on the table from all of the trees that have been permitted to be taken down so far. So, I mean, it's not a fair, really discussion, because this isn't a cost item on our agenda. It's not a budget item on our agenda. It's about setting a goal and creating a bylaw to support that goal, which will get amended in the future, I'm sure, plenty. And when it comes to costs, without tree canopy in Colwood, there will be plenty of other costs for us.
Thank you. Councillor Jordison on the deferment.
Thank you, Mayor. I just wanted to say that I think that not doing anything towards it, or maybe there's a way of doing things differently that isn't, there's always a cost associated with things, but maybe there's a way of doing things differently that permits this from happening easier. But I too echo what Councillor Day is saying, that that I didn't think this was about cost tonight either. Thanks.
Seeing no other, Councillor Ward, sorry about that.
Sorry, if I may motivate slightly, just for clarity, I don't oppose the 40% recommendation, nor do I line up behind it. I think I'm lacking information. It isn't exclusively about cost, if that's the perception of my amendment. I think cost is a factor, because when we determine that this is a high level, like 30,000 foot strategy, when we say, if we put a hard and fast number to something, this is where I started mentioning a range. If we say we have to achieve a 40% tree canopy coverage, invariably costs will eventually stem from that. And that is true across all elements of decision making. But if that is our goal, in fairness, staff will then need to work towards that. They will need to say, okay, council's desire is to see a 40% tree canopy. They work from that and they begin to say, okay, how do we achieve that? And eventually, cost will become a factor. So it isn't the sole deciding factor. I certainly would be more comfortable with a range myself, but I think it would be helpful, I feel, for us to know, and it would have been nicer to have at this meeting, I agree, but it would be helpful for us to know what the difference is there, what other funding mechanisms might be there. And I would love a scenario where we could then look at that and based on the information we get and go, you know what, this is realistic. Let's task staff with pursuing that. So I just want to be clear that I'm certainly not opposed. This isn't an opposition to 40%. I think the tree canopy is an urban forest, or what makes Colwood a desirable place to be. I moved here for the same reasons many other people did, our proximity to, you know, the rural area and forests and such. So just want all the information, that's all. So it's a postponement, not an objection to what's being raised from my perspective anyway. Thanks.
Thank you very much. Councillor Grove.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The only problem here is that we're going to come back with a number. Then we're starting to make a budget decision. And I don't think that this is related to such things. We have a target suggestion of 33 in the recommendation. We have a committee suggestion of 40. And I don't understand how the difference between the two can be boiled down to any kind of a number. Because once it happens, the target gets stated. We'll say, well, what are we doing toward our urban forest canopy target? And we'll say, well, this year we're going to spend $100,000 on new trees, or whatever it is we have. Maybe it's 5,000. Right now, we have so many organizations and groups that are even planting trees. In fact, volunteers that are planting trees. We have a great deal of activity. I'd be more interested in knowing what the realistic result would be in terms of percentage increase based upon such efforts, as well as perhaps an encouraging type of program to get people to plant one tree on their front yard, maybe a few in the schoolyard, maybe here, maybe there, wherever we can find. Let Gordon and his team find us a lot of great spots to plant trees and start working in that direction. To come up with a number to get to 35% of something like $5, $6, $10 million. I don't know what it's going to be. Where we are, we're sitting there now with a ridiculous number. We're not going to approve anything then, because what I'm going to say, we're going to carve out a sliver of that 5 million. Okay, well, what's that sliver worth? Oh, well, that's worth 50,000 or 100,000. That's a 0.5% lift. Then we can talk about it. But if we start looking at 10 million, we're just going to say, no, we can't spend the 10 million. Well, while we make it along, Saanich has got this target of a 1% lift on their canopy for 2064. Well, that's realistic. Well, I mean, you're planning 40 years out. it sounds wonderful. It's like 60,000 trees that they're going to have to plant to reach that goal. So where these numbers get out of hand so fast, so I would love to be able to pass this. I'm not in support of the deferment because I want to deal with this now, get the strategy developed, get the target set. I don't know, maybe 35% instead of 40 might sit better with some people. I know some people on the committee even said the same thing. I was the chair of that meeting. I feel compelled to some degree to support the 40 number, understanding full well that a target of 35 is probably in some ways unrealistic financially, but then 40 is unrealistic. It's no different. It's just more unrealistic, I suppose. I just don't agree that we should be coming back with a report telling us how many millions of dollars it's going to cost us to reach our target and break it down that way, because I don't think that applies practically to a year over year actual change to how we operate and won't do our forest canopy any good. We need to educate folks about keeping trees, encouraging developers to keep trees. We're doing a lot of that already. I've seen the change in the 30 years I've lived in Colwood and the number of trees. A lot of the mature stuff, I was told by a developer who worked for Ridley back in the 60s that the properties that have the big mature trees on them were because those lots sold first. So they thought, whoa, we don't have to cut the trees down because people want them. So we have a whole lot of huge trees that are not particularly landscape friendly, but they do add up to the forest canopy pretty quick, I think. So there I go. I don't know. I just can't support the deferment for that reason, and I would prefer to move forward with the original motion, whether it's 40 or 35%.
Thank you very much, Councilor Grove. Catherine, I think something that I picked up on that just triggered all this in my own head is because you said something about that it's going to be so difficult to even reach the 33% of where we were. I think that's what I heard you say. So that's what triggered actually everything in my own head. So you said that's going to be difficult. 35 is a little more difficult. 40 must be absolutely insane. So when I talk about big, hairy goals, that's what I was talking about. But cost is a factor here. Shit, I'm not going to go turn around and build an RCMP building because I need an RCMP building. But by the way, I don't care about the cost because I need an RCMP building. That's the analogy that I use right now. I want to understand all the factors. And this is one of the factors, but I think the thing that just triggered me was when you said it's going to be difficult at the 33. And so, and I think that was more than a cost thing. It's where do you put them, I guess, is really what you were trying to say. So that's why I just said big, hairy, audacious goal. I mean, can we even do this? And I like to keep it practical. But anyways, your comment, please, Catherine.
Well, I think that we've been focusing on two things. One is it is difficult. So we've done picking some parks, picking some boulevards, and trying to see how many trees we can get on there, doing the diagrams, which we didn't have them ready in time to show you, but that's part of our testing of these canopy cover targets to see if they are achievable. And like I said, we seem to be able to do the 35 for the urban area, and it's a lot of trees. And you'll look at these when we can show them to you, and you'll see, okay, like it is hard to find the space. And the other thing is on the private land, it's very, very difficult. Like Gord keeps saying, there's this focus on high density. There's Bill 44, 47 mandating density. And when you try to balance that with trying to get in enough trees, it's incredibly challenging unless you're building skyscrapers everywhere, which I know is not what Colwood wants. So I just think that we're kind of there in some ways because maybe we should not have focused so much with this numbers game on just the urban area, and we should be including railroads and CFB because, like you say, other communities have natural open spaces that are not under the control of the city as well. So maybe we can kind of achieve both by keeping numbers similar to the ones we're showing you, but also showing what the total canopy is for the city as a whole. And maybe that's achieving everything. And we will include the diagrams later on and sort of show you what we've been working with.
Thank you. So we go back to it, the motion on the floor is the deferment, seconded. Seeing no other questions or comments, I will call the question. All those in favor of the deferment? And those opposed? And it's Councillor Grove, Councillor Jordison, and Councillor Day. So the motion passes. We get a deferment, please. Doesn't say no, folks. Remember that. It's not a no. It's a deferment. More information. Okay. Thank you very much. Let's move on. Bylaws. Okay. Who's introducing this one? Sorry. Oh, there she is. Kelsea. Yeah, this was wasn't this a unanimous? It wasn't unanimous. That's why we put it on here. Okay. Over to you, Kelsea. Oh, Mari?
Yes.
Good, Mari?
So
Okay, good evening, Mayor and Council. So this is our annual omnibus amendment. The amendments are intended to just improve clarity of the bylaw, correct errors throughout the bylaw. They're all minor in nature, and it's just an annual update that we do. Planning and Land Use all voted in favor of it.
Okay. Okay, thank you. Did you get that? Councillor Grove moves, second by Councillor Ward. And Councillor Grove, do you want to motivate? See what you move? No. No. Okay, Councillor Ward. Motivate.
Yeah, very short motivation. The Planning and Land Use Committee unanimously supported this, I believe. I'm not sure why it wasn't in the consent agenda, to be quite frank with you. So I obviously support the motion. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Day.
Thank you. Just a brief comment that our land use bylaw, when you put it all together, it's very confusing. And I appreciated the red line version, but at the same time, I still feel frustrated with the numerous CD zones that we have. I would prefer that we had, it's an apartment building and this is what you need, it's a whatever, and this is what you need kind of a bylaw. And I find it just odd that we have so many amendments in there, including the one for the stories. I mean, that seems straightforward, but then in reading the amendment, it's not straightforward because are we 8-foot ceilings? Are we 11-foot ceilings? Like, how tall is that building really going to be? Becomes an issue. So it just brought up a lot of questions, and reading it more carefully through those amendments. So I would look forward to hearing from planning at some future date as to ways that we might be able to simplify that giant spider web of zoning CD zones. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Seeing no other discussion, I'll call the question. All those in favor? Any opposed? Seeing none, the motion passes unanimously. Thank you. 9.2 corporate service. Can you just read? That's just for adoption, please.
This is Colwood Land Use Bylaw number 151, 1989, amendment number 221. The recommendation is that council adopt this bylaw number 2055, 2025, and it's for adoption for 546 Winthrop Road.
Okay. Can I get a motion and before we open for discussion, motion? Thank you, Councillor Olson, seconder. Councillor Grove. I'll open it for discussion. Councillor Jordison.
Thank you, Mayor. I'm just concerned that this is in a hillside shoreline area, I believe, and wonder if it's not a bad idea to wait to hear what the gentle infill strategy policy comes up with, because again, this is a developed neighborhood of an older neighborhood, I guess, and there's been no consideration of the residents in that neighborhood. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Any other discussion? I will call the Councillor Day.
Sorry, that was a question, Councillor Jordison, was it not? Did we not get an answer? Has there, I just wondered, we did have a motion at the last meeting to have some clarification on the meaning of gentle infill. I've also recently spoken to a number of residents and asked them, because we hear the same thing over and over again from neighborhoods. I think that there should be some consideration for the existing neighborhoods, and right now it's not very clear what that is. So I really wish we knew before we were approving things.
So can you just reframe your question, Councillor Jordison, please? Thank you. I missed the question. I thought you were making a comment.
Well, I mean, I made a comment. My comment was that I think that it's irresponsible to go ahead and approve this and go down this road when there's no real understanding of what the gentle infill policy strategy will come back as. And I just think that I get it, like we haven't considered the residents in this area with the gentle infill, and I'm not sure why. And I'd like to see if it's possible to do that now. I don't know.
Yeah, we're at adoption. So, I don't know. Mr. Johnson, can you answer that question, please?
If council wishes to defer this until that policy is brought back to council, that's council's wish. We can do that. That's council's prerogative.
Okay, thank you very much. If you want to make that motion, you can, Councillor Jordison.
Sure.
If you make the motion, a seconder.
Like to make a motion, yeah, that
Defer.
yeah.
Until you get back the policy on the soft infill.
Yes.
Okay, and the seconder is okay, Councillor Day. Open it for discussion. I guess the only question I have right now, I didn't think this was a gentle infill question. I thought this one had to do with a FAR, right? A FAR is a FAR. Is it not? Now, this one never came back as, oh, we're gonna await an infill for townhomes. I didn't think it was. A good question was actually asked by it was the last email that we received as public input. It was a good question because I've always asked that myself, that question too. A FAR is a FAR, but you know, when we tell people this is the FAR and they abide by the FAR, then what do? I mean, they have every right to do what they're going to do. I may be mistaken, but please correct me on this one right now, because that argument happened to me when way back when I was a councillor in the last council, and it was a bit of a shock, you know, with the height of building that they could build down in Royal Bay, for example, on the corner of Machosen and Latoria, and then we were told, well, this is the FAR that was approved in the OCP and was zoned for, right? And you look at it, you go, well, he's complying with the FAR. I mean, but a great question was asked by the author of this email this afternoon. That was a great question because I go, you're right. Maybe we should be looking at how many units we should be approving. I think that was the question that was being asked. And it was good because I've always questioned that myself. You know, we don't normally do that like in our DPs, do we? It's always, you know, they comply with the FAR and they're doing it to that FAR. And so I guess that's why when I looked at this one, I went, well, this is not the gentle infill question, you know, because that was on the one that we refused. This one was he was in compliance with the FAR, and I didn't think it was an issue at the time that we did first, second, and third reading. Is that correct? Please tell me I'm wrong or right.
Yeah, thank you very much. So yeah, floor area ratio is one tool to regulate density.
Right.
That's the density tool that we use in our OCP. And then all of our comprehensive development zones have an FAR that's consistent with the one that is within the OCP. At the time of development permit is when we would see the number of units that would be proposed at a site that is consistent with that FAR. We will not see that at the time of rezoning necessarily because we're just creating the zone. We're not creating the zone for specific plans. It's just to develop those regulatory tools. So the FAR, the lot coverage, the setbacks, those are all tools to regulate the development on the site. I would say the gentle infill strategy. So this area, this particular development is for townhomes,
Right.
which would form part of a gentle infill strategy. That is a housing form that does consider respecting the impact on neighboring properties. We are currently scoping out the gentle infill strategy. That was a recent direction from council. So we don't have any immediate updates for you on that.
But this particular address 546 was always townhomes to me. It was always townhomes.
That's correct.
Thank you. Council Ward, please. Sorry.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I appreciate, I think, what's been raised by Councillor Jordison in the sense that, you know, there were some proposals that just simply stand out as being questionable. And I wasn't here for the last council meeting, but that particular condo building, you know, there was nothing gentle about it. It was harsh infill, for lack of a better term. But this one, I respectfully have to disagree. I mean, these are townhomes. I've been a proponent of townhomes from the beginning. I think they represent a housing form that is, you know, it's nothing's cheap, but it allows families to find suitable housing in a market that single family homes are, they died with the boomers, basically. You know, you cannot buy those unless you have a lot of family money or some other sort of ability now for young people to get into the market. So townhomes make sense. This has gone through 3 readings. It's been before the Planning and Land Use Committee. It was supported there. Objections were raised. I know when it came before council, those were discussed, and ultimately we chose to move forward on it. So I think sometimes you just have to stick with the decision, and in this case, I'm prepared to do so. That being said, I do laud council for their work 2 weeks ago when I wasn't here on on that gentle infill decision. I think looking at that is the right move where it's applicable. In this case, I think the test here doesn't apply. So I will support moving this forward. Thank you.
Okay, seeing no other comments, I will call the question on the deferment. All those 4, please. Okay, all those against, opposed. Let the record show, Lieutenant, Councillor Jensen, Mayor Kobayashi, Councillor Grove, Councillor Olson, and Councillor Ward. Getting tired. I'm really tired. So that deferment has failed, and you'll move the seconder, please. Okay, Councillor Olson. Further discussion. Councillor Day.
Thank you. I just wanted to ask when we could expect to see something about the gentle infill strategy for established neighborhoods that was approved last meeting.
Staff are looking at what that work plan looks like. We'll be bringing forward a report to council, which will outline the steps, the area, and get council's feedback. I don't have a date for you here today, but I am expecting that we'll have this report to you within the next couple of council meetings.
Thank you.
Okay, I'm going to call the question on this one. All those in favor? And those opposed? Counselor Day, Counselor Jordison opposed. Motion carries. Motion for adjournment, please. Thank you. Kenny Chu, you move. Thank you very much. Well,